Chapter 1528. Seeing that Blackfire's main body was imprisoned in the prison and the remaining flames were extinguished one after another, everyone began to cheer excitedly. It could be said that after the calamity of Blackfire broke out, everyone was worried that Blackfire would bring disaster to the entire Mountain Wheel world. Now, such worries naturally did not exist. Blackfire was imprisoned again, which made them feel very relieved. Moreover, they also saw that Xiaoyang's heavenly flame could devour Blackfire. The destruction of Blackfire was only a matter of time. As long as Blackfire did not exist, the Mountain Wheel world would not be in danger. At this moment, Zhu Congyan walked to Xiaoyang's side and cupped his hands. Ancestor Master really took a risk by imparting the Imperial Fire art to us in its entirety. Although the sound was very low, those who had cultivated the Imperial Fire art all pricked up their ears and heard it clearly. Instantly, everyone's expression changed. No wonder everything went so smoothly. It turned out that Xiaoyang did not hide anything at all. As for what he said before, it was probably just a bluff. That is indeed the case. Xiaoyang also smiled faintly and frankly admitted, now that Blackfire was completely under his control, Xiaoyang did not have to worry about certain things. Therefore, it was not important to admit it now. When did you find out? Xiaoyang asked doubtfully. However, on second thought, Zhu Congyan was a descendant of a true lord. It was normal for him to be sensitive. When you used Blackfire to refine our souls, I knew. Zhu Congyan said frankly. As for whether the Imperial Fire art would be leaked, Zhu Congyan was not worried at all. This was because it was used to deal with Blackfire. Now that Blackfire was about to disappear, the Imperial Fire art would lose its original effect. Even if it was leaked, it would not be of much use. Xiaoyang smiled and did not say anything else. However, looking at Zhu Congyan in front of him, he felt that he could do something. Thank you, Daoist Xiaoyang, for helping us to quell the Blackfire. At this moment, Wen Ming also cupped his hands and said solemnly, back then, the Mountain Wheel world had 3 giants. Wen Chong Elder, who was the most influential, had died in the Black Fire, while Lai Exen, who was the strongest, had died in the hands of Xiaoyang. It could be said that Wen Ming was the strongest. Although the new 3 giants would also appear, at least during this time, Wen Ming's reputation would be the strongest. Xiaoyang waved his hand nonchalantly and said, I received the true Lord's inheritance, so it's only right. Wherever he looked, Xiaoyang suddenly saw that some people's expressions were a little strange. Xiaoyang also smiled bitterly and shook his head. Lai Exan died under my gun. If anyone thinks that they are stronger than Lai Exan, they can give it a try and see if they can get the Blackfire, Xiaoyang said indifferently. As soon as these words came out, some people's expressions became extremely ugly. What's more, Xiaoyang did not kill only Lai Exan. Some of them were indeed tempted. However, after Xiaoyang's warning, they had no choice but to give up regardless of how many thoughts they had. After all, even if they joined forces with some powerful people, could they be stronger than all the top forces of Lai Mountain Sect? Everyone, the Blackfire has been quelled. I still have some things to say to Sect Master Zhu, so I will take my leave. Xiaoyang also cupped his hands and bowed. Seeing this, Wen Ming immediately said, Daoist Xiaoyang, you have contributed the most. You still have to attend this celebration banquet. After it's decided, just let me know. I will not be absent, Xiaoyang said. Wen Ming also nodded with a smile and said a few words to Xiaoyang. Immediately, Xiaoyang gave Zhu Congyan a look. Zhu Congyan understood and left with Xiaoyang. Xiaoyang was not very interested in such a scene of flattery. Moreover, he was just an outsider to the Mountain Wheel boundary realm. After a while, Zhu Congyan brought Xiaoyang to his sect. Our Mountain Fire sect was originally in the Lianyun Mountains. Because of the outbreak of the Black Fire, we used this place as a temporary stronghold, Zhu Congyan said with a hint of loneliness. The Black Fire had caused a big shuffle in the Mountain Wheel boundary realm. Although there were not many casualties in the Mountain Fire sect, they had also suffered a great loss. Because they had left in a hurry, many ancient books had now turned into nourishment for the Black Fire. Xiao Yang smiled indifferently and said, "As long as there are no casualties, it's fine." In Xiao Yang's opinion, it was Zhu Songyun's credit that the Black Fire could be controlled in the first place. If it wasn't for his fire prison array, he didn't know where the Black Fire would have spread to, and how terrible the situation would have become. After seeing Zhu Songyun return, many disciples came forward and asked about the Black Fire. When they saw Xiao Yang, they all knelt on the ground and called him Grandmaster. In response, Xiao Yang immediately asked them to get up. Xiao Yang smiled bitterly at the title of Grandmaster. Although he had told Zhu Songyun that he could not bear the title of Grandmaster, this old antique was stubborn. After a round of pleasantries, Xiao Yang and Zhu Songyun sat down in a pavilion. It was very simple inside, with only a table and a few stools. Xiao Yang was not a pretentious person. After sitting down, he said directly, "Sect Master Zhu, I have never thought of monopolizing the true inheritance of the perfected Lord. What's more, this originally belonged to the Mountain Fire sect." After hearing this, Zhu Songyun was stunned for a moment. Immediately, he understood what Xiao Yang meant. Suddenly, his whole body could not help but tremble with excitement. Looking at the young man in front of him, it could be said that he had turned the tide with his own strength. Now, he did not have the slightest intention to hide anything. This could be clearly seen from the fact that Xiao Yang had released the complete Imperial Fire art. He was such a person who would do what he said. "Sect Master Zhu, this originally belonged to you. As a descendant of a perfected lord, it is natural for you to learn everything that a perfected lord has," Xiao Yang said indifferently. Seeing the Mountain Fire sect in such dire straits, Xiao Yang did not feel good in his heart. No matter what, a perfected lord could be considered half a master to him. At this time, Zhu Songyun directly knelt on the ground and bowed. "Thank you for your wisdom, Grandmaster. Songyun thanks you." Zhu Songyun now admired Xiao Yang even more. If Xiao Yang was willing, he would even give up the position of sect master of the Mountain Fire sect. Under Xiao Yang's leadership, the Mountain Fire sect would definitely be strong and prosperous. Chapter 1529. Xiao Yang immediately helped Zhu Songyun up and said, "Sect Master Zhu, you're trying to shorten my life. You're my senior. How can you be so courteous?" "I can't mess with seniority," Zhu Songyun said. Hearing this, Xiao Yang didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Zhu Songyun didn't have the pride of being a true lord's descendant at all. It wasn't that Zhu Songyun wasn't arrogant, but that he didn't dare. In his opinion, he was a true lord's descendant, and the Mountain Fire sect didn't prosper. This was his fault. Xiao Yang was a true lord's disciple, so it was natural for him to kneel. Even when the most famous Wenchang elder met him, Zhu Songyun was very arrogant. "Sect Master Zhu, don't worry. I'll write down all the techniques left behind by the true lord. First, make a list of all the techniques left behind by the true lord, so I don't have to write down the list repeatedly," Xiao Yang said. Zhu Songyun nodded, indicating that this wasn't a problem. Thinking about giving all these techniques to the Mountain Fire sect, Xiao Yang felt a lot more relaxed. He had received the inheritance of the true lord for no reason, which made him feel a little guilty. This way, they didn't owe each other anything. "I've carefully experienced the Imperial Fire art, but I didn't have time to improve it. If I understand and modify it more, I might be able to control other strange flames." "Sect Master Zhu, please be careful," Xiao Yang said. Suddenly, Zhu Songyun's eyebrows moved slightly. He slapped his head and said, "Sigh, why didn't I think of that?" Then Xiao Yang continued. What happened in the Mountain Wheel realm this time also made Xiao Yang feel the demeanor of a true lord. The great feeling of self-control and caring for one's home made his mentality change greatly. Therefore, Xiao Yang still had some feelings for the Mountain Fire sect, so he was a little more careful. Xiao Yang didn't even keep the heaven-grade magic treasures in the tomb for himself. He gave them all to Zhu Cunyan for him to distribute. After explaining everything, Xiao Yang began to write down the techniques left behind by the true monarch. It had to be said that this was a very time-consuming thing, but he had no choice but to do it. He was aware of the principle of returning things to their rightful owners. It could be said that because of Xiao Yang's actions, the Mountain Fire sect had once again become the leader of the Mountain Wheel world. Of course, this was a story for the future. Although writing down these techniques consumed a lot of mental energy, there was another benefit. It allowed Xiao Yang to sort through them and then find a suitable one for himself to cultivate. A day later, the list of names came out. Xiao Yang discovered that there were quite a lot of things that had been passed down, which would save him a lot of effort. At the same time, the new housemaster of the Wenchang Pavilion, Wen Kuei, also came in person. He informed Xiao Yang that 3 days later, there would be a celebratory banquet for the suppression of the Black Fire and asked him to attend. After explaining everything clearly, Wen Kuei knelt on the ground and said, "Thank you, Brother Xiao Yang, for avenging my father." Back then, when Wen Kuei found out that his father had died at the hands of Lai Xan, he was furious and wanted to take revenge. However, he later realized that Lai Xan was the strongest existence in the Mountain Wheel world. How could he be a match for him? However, Xiao Yang had solved this huge problem for him. This made Wen Kuei very excited. "If you have any requests in the future, just say the word. I will not hesitate to do anything," Wen Kuei said sincerely. Xiao Yang helped him up and said, "Brother, you're exaggerating. Lai Xan was full of evil, and he helped the evildoer. Killing him was something that I should do." Xiao Yang felt very helpless. Why was it another person who knelt down at the slightest disagreement? Could it be that the Mountain Wheel world had always had this tradition? After exchanging a few pleasantries with the grateful Wen Kuei, Xiao Yang sent him off. After all, it was important to continue passing down the inheritance of the true Lord in the Mountain Fire sect. Moreover, Xiao Yang still had to go to the realm of the gods. It would not be good for him to stay here for too long. In the Mountain Wheel world, Xiao Yang's reputation had soared because of his identity as the disciple of the true Lord. In addition, he had quelled the calamity of the Black Fire. It could be said that everyone knew about him. Putting everything else aside, the title of the true Lord's disciple was enough to make countless people respect him. Who was the true Lord? He was the god of the Mountain Wheel world. 3 days passed, and Xiao Yang went to the celebration banquet. Many almighties of the Mountain Wheel world came to get close to this true Lord's disciple. Of course, that was not all. The fact that he had single-handedly slaughtered the entire Lai Mountain sect was enough to move countless people. Although Xiao Yang was on the verge of death after he came out, he still managed to do it. Towards such a celebration banquet, Xiao Yang felt a little uncomfortable. During this period, Sang Miaoshou took out some herbs for Xiao Yang to look at and see if they could be used as ingredients for the explosive elixir. This gave Xiao Yang a headache. However, he had to admit that Sang Miaoshou was indeed good. Among the substitutes that he found, 90% of them were good. Quelling the calamity of the Black Fire could be said to be a celebration. The celebration banquet lasted for 7 days. Xiao Yang only stayed for 1 night and then returned to the Mountain Fire sect. 10 days later, Xiao Yang was almost done with his cultivation. At the same time, he also wrote down all the lost or uninherited techniques of the true Lord. Sect leader Zhu, my mission has been completed. We will meet again. As Xiao Yang spoke, he pushed a pile of books in front of Zhu Cunyan. These were all the inheritances of the true Lord. There was nothing left out. Looking at these books, Zhu Cunyan's eyes became very fiery. These books looked ordinary, but they were written by Xiao Yang. They were the blood and sweat of the ancestor. To the Mountain Fire sect, they were naturally extraordinary. A man's wealth is his own ruin. Sect leader Zhu, please be careful. Don't let the news leak out. During these days in the Mountain Fire sect, I will announce that my injuries have not healed and that I am recuperating here." Xiao Yang said worriedly. Although the Black Fire was gone, the inheritances of the true Lord were still very popular. The Mountain Fire sect's current strength was not considered top-notch. Even King Wu, a rank 7 expert, was struggling. In the Mountain Wheel world, they were not even considered a first-rate sect. If they were targeted, it would not be a good thing. Silently making a fortune. This was also an unchanging truth since time immemorial. Songyun understands. Zhu Songyun said. Suddenly, Zhu Songyun thought of Xiao Yang's words and said, "Grandmaster is leaving." "That's right. I was originally prepared to go to the God world. It was only because Little Fire sensed that there was a strange fire here that I came. Who would have thought that such a big thing would happen?" Xiao Yang said and smiled helplessly. The Mountain Wheel world also changed Xiao Yang's thoughts a lot. Chapter 1530. When Xiao Yang left the Mountain Wheel world, the Reincarnation sect, Wenchang Building, Mountain Fire sect, and many other sects sent him off. They gave Xiao Yang the highest treatment. As the hero who quelled the Black Fire, Xiao Yang was naturally respected by the entire Mountain Wheel world. It was normal for them to treat him with such respect. Xiao Yang was a little surprised by this. Among them, Zhu Songyun was the most reluctant. He even wanted to follow Xiao Yang to travel and see the world. However, Xiao Yang rejected him mercilessly. After all, without him, the Mountain Fire sect would lose its backbone. As for some of the younger talents, the difference in strength was too big. It would be inconvenient to bring them along. It wasn't that Xiao Yang was heartless. It was just that he had to solve everything. Even a genius would grow very slowly if he didn't face things on his own. Most of the time, he could only grow by relying on his own experiences. Xiao Yang lay alone at the bow of the flying ship. He controlled the flying ship to move forward slowly towards the realm of the gods. Although he had spent some time in the Mountain Wheel world, it didn't matter. There was still plenty of time for him to go to the realm of the gods. However, Xiao Yang felt helpless because of the regression of his cultivation level. There was also the loss of many magic treasures, which made Xiao Yang's heart ache even more when he thought about it. With a thought, Xiao Yang looked at Xiao Hua. After devouring 1/3 of Black Fire's body, Xiao Hua still hadn't finished absorbing it. He was still competing with Black Fire. Black Fire was very weak now. He couldn't threaten Xiao Hua at all. It was only a matter of time before he was digested. On the other hand, Xiao Hua's strength was rising continuously because of the continuous absorption of Black Fire. Even King Wu, a rank 6 cultivator, would find it difficult to deal with Xiao Hua. Furthermore, Xiao Hua hadn't even digested 1/3 of Black Fire. If he devoured all of it, it was hard to say how terrifying he would become. Xiao Yang was looking forward to it. After Xiao was settled down, Xiao Yang also began to enter a state of mind. He began to comprehend the insights of the true Lord's inheritance. Comprehending and mastering were two completely different things. Although Xiao Yang had comprehended it, he didn't completely integrate it and turn it into his own experience. Even if he was enlightened, it was only on the surface. The flying ship moved forward in the endless galaxy. It seemed very lonely. Occasionally, some hunters would appear. When they saw the flying ship, they were naturally very jealous. They immediately intercepted it and prepared to snatch it. However, Xiao Yang did not even open his eyes. With a thought, the heavenly Qin mountain appeared and suppressed him. In this endless galaxy, most of the hunters were ordinary cultivators at the 7th level of the martial king realm. They did not have a good life in their homeland, so they were like this. Although some of them were more powerful, they didn't dare to provoke a person who had a divine weapon in his hand. Not to mention, the genuine pressure that was being emitted made them understand even more clearly that the true body was already so powerful before even making a move. If the true body were to make a move, would they still be able to survive? It had to be said that Xiao Yang missed Baldi and Qin Mingho. If the two of them were here, he wouldn't have to worry about this. Of course, he didn't have to worry now. He just needed to put in some effort. A few months later, Xiao Yang's aura suddenly skyrocketed. He opened his eyes, and a bright light burst out. His aura became different. Finally, I've returned to the half-step 8th order, Xiao Yang said with a smile on his face. In a few months, Xiao Yang had comprehended all of the perfected Lord's experiences and insights. It was also because of this that he was able to cross the threshold and return to half-step rank 8. It could be said that the higher a cultivator's realm was, the more likely it was that the original realm would become a natural chasm that was difficult to cross. This was also why Xiao Yang felt so uncomfortable back then. He didn't know how much time he would need to cross this natural chasm. Fortunately, the true Lord's inheritance helped him. Since ancient times, how many almighty people died with regret because their realms regressed after fighting with all their might. They couldn't advance any further. There were too many examples of this kind of thing. The main reason was that it would form a psychological barrier for a person. Then, Xiao Yang's mind turned, and a hammer appeared in his hand. The Holy Lightning Hammer, the 1,000 Thunder Palace's most precious treasure. The Holy Lightning Hammer could be said to be a divine weapon. However, Xiao Yang didn't use it after he obtained it. He kept it covered in dust. Although Xiao Yang also knew some hammer techniques, he couldn't use them at all. He couldn't even use 1/10,000th of the divine weapon's power. As such, it wouldn't be of much use even if he took it out. Or if the attributes didn't match, it would be difficult to use. Even if it was used, it would be a disgrace to the divine weapon's name. However, he found a very good martial technique from the true Lord's inheritance. It was a low-grade, heaven-level martial technique. It just happened to match the attributes of the Holy Lightning Hammer. As for how powerful it would be when used, that was unknown. However, Xiao Yang believed that once he was familiar with it, its power wouldn't be bad. Departing Wind Mysterious Thunder Hammer Technique. The intersection of wind and thunder. I wonder how powerful it will be, Xiao Yang muttered as he leaped up and started to move in the void. Departing Wind Mysterious Thunder, as the name implied, combined the power characteristics of wind and thunder. The two complemented each other, and only in this way could its power be unleashed to the maximum. The next moment, Xiao Yang let out a low roar and smashed down with the hammer. Instantly, the thunder armor wind Mysterious Thunder passed through. Although it seemed casual, its power was extraordinary. The space kept exploding. It even landed on a planet and shattered it directly. Xiao Yang shook his head and said, "Although I have the power of thunder and lightning because I consumed the inner core and the thunder fruit, it isn't perfect. However, it is compensated by the Holy Lightning Hammer, so it's not bad. However, the sharpness of the wind is my weakness." The sharpness of the wind attribute was something Xiao Yang didn't have. Therefore, it was still very difficult for Xiao Yang to unleash the full power of the Departing Wind Mysterious Thunder Hammer. Usually, every cultivator would focus on one type of power and cultivate it to the maximum. Xiao Yang's choice was the power of poison and his physical body's brute force. He had the power of thunder because of the thunder fruit. As for the wind attribute, it was a little extravagant. I'm not in a hurry. As long as I cultivate for enough time, I will be able to unleash 90% of its power. Xiao Yang held the Holy Lightning Hammer and smiled. Now he had at least one martial technique that could complement this divine weapon. Chapter 1531. The appearance of the mythical thunder hammer technique also made up for Xiao Yang's weakness of not being able to use the Holy Thunder Hammer. But then again, even though the Holy Thunder Hammer was a legendary weapon, Xiao Yang did not like to use this type of weapon. It could be said that it was very uncomfortable to use. However, Xiao Yang did not slack off in his cultivation. As long as he had free time, he would take the time to cultivate. Of course, to Xiao Yang now, the cultivation of his realm was more important. With his current realm, it was still very difficult for him to participate in the realm of gods and win. Even though he had the explosive elixir, those who could participate in the realm of gods were probably peerless geniuses from all over the world. They must be very powerful. Take Shen Wushuang, for example. He had entered King Wu rank 8 long ago. Putting aside the realm of gods, Bai Jian and Lei Dingyin of Sky Sword Realm and Thousand Thunder Realm were both King Wu rank 8 existences. Even now, after Xiaoyang had consumed the explosive elixir, he was not confident that he could defeat Bai Jian. It could be said that this was a very realistic thing. Xiaoyang still had a very clear understanding of himself. Moreover, it was still unknown how powerful the people in the realm of gods were. After all, the realm of gods was the most powerful place in this small world. There was no doubt that no matter whether it was resources or other things, they were probably very good. As for what exactly it was, Xiaoyang was not very clear. He would only be able to feel the changes in the realm of gods when he reached the realm of gods. Although going to the mountain world deviated from Xiaoyang's route to the realm of gods, it would not take too much time. There were still more than 2 years to the realm of gods, so Xiaoyang was not anxious at all. Instead, he continued to ponder over the true Lord's inheritance. Although it was difficult to comprehend all the skills and martial arts in a short period of time, and of course there was no need for that. However, those unique insights were very important. At King Wu realm, the cultivation of strength was often not as important as before. Comprehension took up a large part of it. It could be said that Xiaoyang had always paid great attention to the cultivation of strength. After he entered the 7th step of King Wu, he swallowed the Berserk Thunder Ape's inner core and even took the Nightmare Thunder Fruit. The increase in his strength was no small matter. However, Xiaoyang wasn't able to directly break through because he lacked some comprehension. It was unknown whether it was because of the frequent consumption of the eruption pill that caused Xiaoyang to be somewhat numb, which was why his cultivation was somewhat stagnant. After that, his realm fell, but he relied on the inheritance of the true monarch to recover again. The importance of comprehension was also evident. Xiaoyang cultivated while stewing the violent ape's tendons. Consuming the violent ape's flesh could also make up for Xiaoyang's lack of focus on comprehension during this period of time. A month later, Xiaoyang also arrived at the border of the divine realm. He didn't think too much about it and directly prepared to enter the divine realm. At the border between the divine realm and other worlds, there was a circle of void zone. However, just as Xiaoyang entered the airship, an old man appeared at the bow of the airship without batting an eyelid. It was as if he suddenly appeared. Seeing the appearance of this old man, Xiaoyang's heart was immediately shocked because he didn't feel anything at all. This also confirmed one thing, which was that this old man's cultivation was most likely not low. According to Xiaoyang's conservative estimate, he was at least an expert of the 8th step of King Wu. May I know if Senior has any advice for suddenly visiting Junior? Xiaoyang also immediately stood up and didn't dare to have the slightest bit of neglect in terms of etiquette. The last time Xiaoyang and the previous demon lord almost fought in the divine realm, it was the Almighty of the divine realm who drove them out. Therefore, Xiaoyang was still very fearful of the divine realm. Since it was the strongest existence in this small world, it naturally couldn't be underestimated or underestimated. That old man's gaze constantly wandered around the airship. Shortly after, he stroked his beard and said with a smile, "It's a big crime for a non-resident of the divine realm to enter the divine realm without permission." Hearing this, Xiaoyang's expression immediately changed. He really hadn't heard of this saying before. However, Xiaoyang firmly believed in one point, and that was that strength was the right to speak. It's just a joke. As long as you don't cause trouble in the divine realm, everything is fine. There are many young talents who come to the divine realm to gain experience. I'm just scaring you. Why are you so flustered? It seems like you've never been to the divine realm. The old man also said with a smile. Hearing this, Xiaoyang also heaved a sigh of relief. Looking at this old man, there was also a trace of helplessness in his heart. This was simply an old man who didn't respect himself and just wanted to make fun of people. Moreover, you have the airship. This is our Princess Mingzhu's invitation. With this item, you're a distinguished guest of the divine realm, the old man continued. Xiao Yang cupped his hands and said, It's indeed my first time in the divine realm. There are many things that I don't understand. I hope you can guide me, Senior. Xiao Yang had only learned a few words about the divine realm from Unrivaled God. He didn't know much about it. Moreover, the divine realm had always been a rather mysterious place. It wasn't a place that just anyone could come to. Moreover, rumors about the divine realm only mentioned that the honorable ones were powerful. Nothing else was known. After hearing Xiao Yang's name, the old man's expression suddenly changed. His gaze also changed greatly. Being scrutinized like this made Xiao Yang feel a little uncomfortable. In addition to the teasing from before, Xiao Yang now felt a trace of anger in his heart. However, Xiao Yang suppressed it very well. After all, the old man in front of him gave off an unfathomable feeling. If he were to flare up, he might not be able to get anything out of it. Although Xiao Yang suppressed his anger very well, it didn't escape the old man's gaze. I didn't expect you to be Xiao Yang. Although you haven't come to the divine realm yet, you're considered quite famous in the divine realm. The old man's tone sounded very strange. His words made Xiao Yang's expression change. He had already thought of the culprit in his heart. His whereabouts had been exposed, he had encountered a lot of trouble later on, and he had almost lost his life. All of this had been said by one person. That person was Unrivaled God. When Unrivaled God left the upper realm, he had made it clear that he had to prepare for the Divine Realm Grand Tournament. Therefore, he had returned to the Divine Realm as well, for his deeds to be publicized in the Divine Realm. Unrivaled God must have contributed greatly to this. Chapter 1532. He had yet to reach the God Realm, but Unrivaled God's big mouth had already spread his name far and wide. It was fine if someone else said it, but Xiao Yang had a hunch that if Unrivaled God were to say it, it would cause him a lot of trouble again. Xiao Yang felt helpless in his heart. It seemed that he would have to be more careful after entering the realm of the gods. Moreover, the God Realm Grand Tournament was just around the corner. If he were to cause any more trouble, there would be even more trouble. After Unrivaled God returned to the God Realm, he said that you were determined to get Princess Mingzhu. Now that I look at you, you're only half a step away from King Wu, rank 8. Why would you say something so arrogant? The old man asked with a smile. The old man had heard of some of the young man's deeds. He had killed Tian Bianu, who was of a higher level than him. How impressive was that? The old man had met Tian Bianu before. Tian Bianu's ability was not weak, and he was a genius back in the day. However, there were always new talents in every generation. Xiao Yang was even better than the old. This was not surprising. Many people had inexplicably made many enemies in the God Realm because of Xiao Yang's determination to get Princess Mingzhu. The old man would not interfere. Instead, he was curious whether this genius would fall under great pressure or soar to the top. Both were worth waiting to see. Senior, I didn't say anything like that, Xiao Yang said as cold sweat broke out on his back. Unrivaled God really did not change. He had made so many enemies for no reason. It seemed like the next time they met, Lin Huang would have to teach him a lesson. Otherwise, if Unrivaled God continued to cause trouble, Lin Huang's troubles would only increase. Seeing this, the old man laughed out loud and said, It doesn't matter whether you said it or not. After all, Unrivaled God's words are much more credible than yours in the God Realm. If you don't admit it, you'll be a coward. It could be said that Xiao Yang was being roasted on a stove now. This feeling was terrible. Initially, Xiao Yang wanted to cultivate in the God Realm for a while to see if he could break through his level. However, in this way, he really couldn't stop himself from wanting peace. It seems that I have no choice but to bite the bullet, Xiao Yang said helplessly. Of course, Xiao Yang was not afraid of trouble. Since he had already come to this point, it was understandable. Why would he be afraid of fighting Xiaoyang? Since he was already famous, he naturally had to live up to his reputation. Otherwise, his reputation would definitely fall to rock bottom. When the old man heard this, a strange expression appeared on his face. Because when he looked at this young man, it was as if he was being pushed away and not showing off his abilities. Or it could be said that the current Xiaoyang was very conflicted. Originally, he wanted to keep a low profile when he entered the God world. However, there were people who were trying to create momentum for him, which caused a lot of trouble for no reason. But since he had already reached this step, he couldn't back down. Now, the old man's view of Xiaoyang had changed slightly. A genius who didn't show off his abilities seemed to be quite good. Since ancient times, there had been many geniuses who showed off their abilities. It could be said that they were in the limelight for a period of time. However, the number of geniuses who fell was even more innumerable. If Senior doesn't have anything else to teach, this Junior will take his leave. Xiaoyang cupped his hands and said with a smile. The old man nodded slightly and said, "Go ahead." After saying that, the old man's body flashed and disappeared. Seeing such a miraculous movement technique, Xiaoyang was slightly stunned in his heart. This speed that was difficult to be detected by the naked eye really made people envious. Of course, if Xiaoyang used his consciousness to capture, he would definitely be able to find the old man's position. However, it was obviously very inappropriate to do so now. If he angered the old man, then the loss would really outweigh the gain. Now, Xiaoyang was still not very familiar with the rules of the God world. Hence, there were many places where he needed to keep a low profile. Soon after, Xiaoyang did not stay any longer. He drove the flying ship and continued to move forward. He was prepared to leave this area and enter the God world. The old man stood on top of a tall mountain. Behind him, 2 young men appeared. The 2 young men were wearing golden armor. They looked very mighty, as if they were sacred and inviolable. "General, is this Xiaoyang really as powerful as the rumors say?" One of the young men asked doubtfully. The other young man's eyes kept flashing. It was obvious that he also wanted to know the answer to whether or not it was true. The old man smiled and nodded. He said, "I didn't make a move, so I'm not sure. However, don't you believe by Jian's words? He killed Tian Bunu despite the fact that he was opportunistic, but that's still his strength." When the 2 of them heard that, their eyes still showed that they were not convinced. It could be said that because of the strength of the God world, the cultivators of the God world were much stronger than the cultivators of other places. Therefore, the cultivators of the God world were very proud. It was very normal for most of them to challenge those of a higher level after leaving the God world. Therefore, to them, Xiaoyang's ability to challenge those of a higher level was nothing special. The old man seemed to sense the unconvinced gazes behind him. He smiled and shook his head. This was the pride of the God world. It was hard to correct it. Didn't Yang Sen say that he was going to deal with Xiaoyang? Send him a letter immediately and tell him Xiaoyang's route. "It's still not too late to stop him," the old man said with a smile. Immediately, the 2 young men's eyes flashed. Yang Sen was very unhappy when he heard unrivaled God boasting about Xiaoyang. Therefore, he kept saying that he would prove unrivaled God wrong. If that was the case, he would let Yang Sen deal with him. Then he would know whether Xiaoyang was really powerful or not. "Yes, sir." The young man in golden armor immediately turned and left after hearing that. The old man did not look back. Instead, he shook his head helplessly. These 2 young men were only rank 5 King Wu. How dare they look down on Xiaoyang? Pride was a good thing. However, over the years, these young men had turned pride into complacency. This was a very bad atmosphere. The God world was indeed the most powerful existence in this mini-world. However, it was not impossible for other places to produce exceptional geniuses. On the other hand, it was ridiculous for these ordinary geniuses to look down on other geniuses who were like monsters. However, they did not know that. They would probably be stuck in their own ways in the future. It seems that the God World Grand Tournament this time is quite interesting. There are endless geniuses from all over. The old man smiled as he stroked his beard. Chapter 1533. After passing through the Void Zone, Xiaoyang officially stepped into the territory of the God Realm. Upon entering the God Realm, what greeted him was beautiful scenery. Tall mountains stood tall, and there were clouds and mist lingering on the mountainsides. It looked like a fairyland. Just by slightly sensing the rich spiritual energy, one would feel extremely comfortable. If one could cultivate here, it would definitely be twice the result with half the effort. The density of spiritual energy in the God Realm is almost 10 times higher than that in our upper-class territory, Xiaoyang exclaimed. He was very envious. To be able to cultivate here and break through to King Wu's level, one would only need a proper rest to reach that level. It seemed that it was not without reason that the God Realm could become the most powerful existence in this world. This made Xiaoyang even more envious. At the same time, another thought appeared in Xiaoyang's mind. When exactly would the flowing cloud world be able to have such dense spiritual energy? After all, it was meaningless to be envious. After all, this was the God Realm and not the drifting cloud realm. Therefore, the most important thing was for his home to become stronger. Looking at the vast sea of clouds, they seemed to be condensed from spiritual energy. That ethereal feeling made one feel as if they were in a fairyland, and it was hard to extricate oneself. Looking at the ground beneath his feet, it was incomparably vast and endless. The lush vitality made one's heart and mind feel refreshed. Xiaoyang also had a good impression of the divine plane. However, he did not know how the cultivators of this place were like. However, thinking about unrivaled God's big mouth, Xiaoyang felt a little uncomfortable. If it were not for that guy's meddling, how would he have encountered so much trouble? However, if it were not for unrivaled God's big mouth, Xiaoyang would probably still be wandering in the endless sea of stars, looking for opportunities and missing out on most of them. However, while Xiaoyang was still sitting on the flying ship, a youth in silver armor suddenly came over with a spear in his hand. After Xiaoyang sensed the person coming, he immediately stopped sensing and looked over. Because he was not familiar with this place, he needed to be cautious. Very quickly, the silver-armored youth stopped charging when he was about 50 feet away from the flying ship. His gaze constantly wandered over Xiaoyang's body. Xiaoyang was a little displeased to be scrutinized in such a manner, so he returned the same scrutinizing gaze. The silver-armored youth had sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes. His expression was extremely solemn, as if he was a god. He stood there without the slightest emotion. However, the silver-armored young man frowned slightly when he was scrutinized in such a manner, and a trace of anger appeared on his face. Clearly, the silver-armored youth was extremely displeased. He was a young genius of the immortal realm, yet he was being scrutinized by an outsider in such a manner. This was simply impudent. How dare you? How dare you be so rude? The silver-armored youth scolded. Faced with the silver-armored youth's scolding, Xiaoyang looked indifferent and said, "I'm just looking at you from your perspective. Tell me, who's the rude one?" Although Xiaoyang could not see through the silver-armored youth's cultivation, he was not the slightest bit afraid. As for whether the other party had the ability to hide his cultivation, or if his cultivation was higher than his, Xiaoyang was still not sure. After all, the immortal realm was originally very mysterious. It could be said that there were endless methods, and it was difficult to say for sure. However, Xiaoyang had already been humiliated previously, and he was very unhappy. Now that another person appeared and looked at him in such a manner, how could he be happy in his heart? Even a clay bodhisattva would have some anger. Moreover, Xiaoyang had given in again and again, and he really could not give in now. Since the old man had already said before if he blindly avoided it, his reputation would be completely different. I'm the son of Anyang City's city lord, the captain of the immortal realm's rank 6 guards, Song Fengqing. How precious is my identity! On the other hand, "You wild brat, looking at me with such a gaze. You're offending your superior." The silver-armored youth scolded. Hearing this, Xiaoyang laughed in disdain. It seemed like this guy was really using his identity to pressure others. He was really going overboard. Faced with such pressure, how could Xiaoyang be afraid in his heart? It seemed that there was no lack of arrogant fellows in the immortal realm. Song Fengqing looked at the flying ship, and there was a strange look in his eyes. The size of the immortal realm was immeasurable. Of course, there were also many rules in the immortal realm. The difference in status was very obvious, and it was hard to determine who was superior and who was inferior. As the son of the immortal realm city lord, Song Fengqing naturally knew what that flying ship represented. In terms of official position, he was only rank 6. It was impossible for him to have the qualifications to attend Princess Mingzhu's banquet. However, if he could get an invitation, then he would naturally have the qualifications. If he was lucky enough to gain Princess Mingzhu's favor, then it would be a cinch for him to have a meteoric rise. As for the fellow in front of him, he could tell at a glance that he was merely lucky enough to have obtained a flying ship in the outside world. The cultivators in the outside world were weak. So how could they compare to him? "So you're the son of the city lord." "Sorry for the disrespect," Xiaoyang said with a smile. Hearing this, Song Fengqing's expression immediately lightened up. He even felt a little smug. After this fellow heard his identity, he would definitely be so scared that he would not dare to be arrogant anymore. When the time came, all he had to do was scare him verbally, coerce him, and the invitation would fall into his hands. Thinking of this, Song Fengqing became more and more excited. It was as if the opportunity to change his life was right in front of him. Looking at the other party's insufferably arrogant expression, Xiaoyang found it rather amusing. It seemed that people in the immortal realm were generally very arrogant and full of themselves. Looking at it now, although unrivaled God had a big mouth, he knew what respect was. "Sir, may I know what crime I've committed that you're suddenly blocking my way?" Xiaoyang asked politely as if he had already given in. Seeing that the other party was somewhat submissive, Song Fengqing was even more certain that the other party was a coward. All he needed to do was scare him a little, and everything would be settled. Immediately, Song Fengqing's expression turned serious, and he said sternly, "You broke the rules when you entered the immortal realm and disrupted the order of our Anyang city. Therefore, you've committed a serious crime." As he spoke, anger appeared on Song Fengqing's face. Chapter 1534. Hearing this, Xiaoyang sneered in his heart. The other party suddenly appeared and stopped him. If he had really broken any rules, why would he say this? Therefore, there must be something fishy about this. As for what kind of fishy, he was not very clear. However, he had roughly guessed the reason behind it. "This is my first time entering the divine world. I don't know what rules I have broken or what order I have disrupted," Xiaoyang said timidly with a fearful look. Seeing that the other party was afraid, Song Fengqing was overjoyed. He was indeed a coward. He spilled everything after being frightened. As for the airship, it was distributed to various places. This fellow did not have much strength and probably only got the airship by luck. Of course, these were not important anymore. To Song Fengqing, it was a good thing that the airship landed in his hands. This was not just an invitation. It was a supreme opportunity. "You have entered the divine world, but did not report to our Anyang city. Instead, you flew over the city. This is breaking the rules." Song Fengqing's expression and voice became much more serious at this time. He had an irresistible look and spoke righteously. From the looks of it, it was as if Xiaoyang had committed a heinous crime. Heinous beyond redemption. Even 10,000 deaths would not be enough to appease his crime. Hearing this, Xiaoyang sneered in his heart. What kind of dog**T rules and order was this? A young master from a remote Anyang city in the divine world could act so unscrupulously? Your crime is so serious that you can turn around. I have always been benevolent and am willing to give you a way out. As long as you hand over the airship and leave the divine world quickly, I will treat it as if nothing happened." Song Fengqing said coldly. Hearing this, Xiaoyang laughed. Now he finally understood that Song Fengqing was here for the airship. His motive was really straightforward. Of course, Xiaoyang could understand this point. Princess Mingzhu was the apple of everyone's eye in the divine world. She was loved by countless cultivators. Presumably, Song Fengqing was one of them. However, he was not qualified to participate in the banquet, so he could only come up with some devious ideas. In that case, it was understandable. However, the way the other party snatched the invitation made people feel that they could also do the same. Very quickly, Xiaoyang changed his mind. He didn't come to the God realm for Princess Mingzhu, so there was no need for him to do something like this. You are really kind-hearted. I wonder, when did such a rule appear in the realm of the gods? Are you in charge of the order in Anyang City? Xiaoyang mocked. There was indeed such a rule in the immortal realm. However, the restrictive power of this rule wasn't great. It was already in a state of being dispensable, and was on the verge of being abandoned. Seeing the other party suddenly laugh, Song Fengqing felt very uncomfortable and angry in his heart. Could it be that this guy wanted to die? If that's the case, I don't mind fulfilling his wish. Whatever I say in Anyang City is the rule, since you are seeking your own death. Don't blame me for not warning you. Song Fengqing said angrily. At the same time, Song Fengqing clenched the long spear in his hand tightly. Majestic spiritual energy was released continuously, suppressing Xiaoyang. Xiaoyang was even more certain now that he had said those words. Strength was the only thing that mattered. Why don't you just say that strength is everything? You are stronger than me. My appearance in front of you is already a hindrance. You have your eyes on my flying ship and want to see Princess Mingzhu. Wouldn't it be over if I just said that? When Xiaoyang said that, he appeared to be very casual. If Song Fengqing didn't release his aura, Xiaoyang really couldn't determine what his cultivation was like. However, now, Xiaoyang also felt it clearly. He was just King Wu rank 6, and he dared to be so rampant? It had to be said that this was really a joke. Perhaps King Wu rank 6 in the realm of the gods could make countless people fear him in the endless sea of stars. However, Xiaoyang also had monstrous talent and the ability to challenge those of higher level. How could he be afraid of the other party? If you think so, then so be it. If you don't obediently hand over the flying ship and leave the realm of the gods, only death awaits you. Song Fengqing's voice became much colder. Although his thoughts were seen through, Song Fengqing didn't become angry out of humiliation. Instead, he was very calm. Now, obtaining the flying ship was the most important thing. Xiaoyang's foot lightly stepped on the flying ship. He had to admit that this thing was really a hot potato that could cause a lot of trouble. I would like to see how you are going to bully others, and whether you have the ability to do so, Xiaoyang said coldly. With such strength, he wanted to be arrogant in front of him. Wasn't he too arrogant? You are courting death. Song Fengqing shouted angrily. In the next moment, Song Fengqing directly took action. Since this guy who didn't know what was good for him wanted to provoke him, then he would let him go to hell and regret his decision. Killing him would be like squashing an ant. Why would he hesitate? The rules in the realm of the gods were indeed strict. However, killing an outsider was just a casual accusation. This kind of matter would naturally be settled easily. Suddenly, a strong pressure hit him in the face. Xiaoyang also frowned slightly. The cultivators of the realm of the gods were indeed different. Compared to the drifting cloud realm's King Wu rank 6, they were really much stronger. It was inevitable that the realm of the gods had such a lead. Who asked them to come out of the heavenly abode? It could be said that those good heavenly abodes in the upper realm couldn't be compared to any place in the realm of the gods. This was the difference between the clouds and the mud. However, he was only slightly stronger than ordinary cultivators. However, Xiaoyang still didn't put him in his eyes. He stood still and didn't move at all. Seeing that Xiaoyang didn't move at all, Song Fengqing thought that he was scared silly. He was very pleased with himself. This spear, if I can end you, then it's naturally okay. Song Fengqing, who was used to doing whatever he wanted in Anyang City, was also numb to killing people. Because his father was the city lord, as long as it wasn't something too out of line, it could be settled. Moreover, the importance of the flying ship made the father and son scramble for it, like a flock of ducks. Song Fengqing thought and increased his strength. The cold light at the tip of the spear also became more and more dazzling. His killing intent was obvious. Chapter 1535. As long as he could obtain the airship. What did it matter if he killed an outsider? Moreover, it didn't matter if he was killed by an unknown brat, who would dare to seek justice in the realm of the gods. Furthermore, the father and son were in control of Anyang City. How would the realm of the gods believe the words of an outsider? The more Song Fengqing thought about it, the more excited he became. In his opinion, after killing Xiaoyang and obtaining the airship, he would be able to achieve meteoric success when Princess Mingzhu's banquet started. As for other matters, there was no need to worry about them now. Immediately, the killing intent in Song Fengqing's heart became much thicker. Traces of ferocity were reflected in his eyes. Xiaoyang snorted in disdain when he saw the other party charging towards him with a spear in his hand. A mere sixth-order martial king had the guts to attack him? Xiaoyang wasn't made of dough that others could trample on as they wished. In the next moment, Xiaoyang's figure flashed and disappeared from the spot. At that moment, Song Fengqing's brows furrowed slightly as he saw Xiaoyang's speed. It was simply too fast. In the next moment, Song Fengqing was even more shocked because he felt that the aura had appeared behind him. After Xiaoyang appeared, he directly stepped on Song Fengqing's waist with his foot. Immediately, Song Fengqing felt a meteor-like force smashing into his body. The sound of bones cracking was also heard. His entire body was like a meteor as he fell with a loud bang. Looking at the falling Song Fengqing, the corners of Xiaoyang's mouth curled up slightly. He said in disdain, "You're just a rank 6 King Wu. How dare you be so arrogant in front of me?" Although Xiaoyang was only 1 rank higher than the other party, the difference in strength wasn't small. The divine realm had always been peaceful, and there were no disasters. Furthermore, Song Fengqing was a spoiled brat who lived a carefree life. Compared to Xiaoyang, who had fought all the way until now, the gap between him and Xiaoyang was enormous. After finishing off his opponent with a kick, Xiaoyang returned to the airship. In a short while, Song Fengqing flew up again. He was still wearing a set of silver armor, but his face was extremely pale and he was sweating profusely. Because his spine was broken, he could only rely on spiritual energy to support his body. However, it was obvious that he was very confident. Xiaoyang wasn't a bloodthirsty person. He only wanted to teach Song Fengqing a lesson when he blocked his way. It wasn't that he had to die. However, when Song Fengqing blocked his path once again, Xiaoyang was extremely unhappy in his heart. Could it be that this guy really wanted to die? Following that, Xiaoyang also felt a few powerful auras soaring into the sky and rapidly surrounding him. Immediately, Xiaoyang's face turned ugly. Since this was the territory of Anyang City, and his father was the city lord, it was normal for them to come to his aid. After a short while, the 3 of them appeared beside Song Fengqing. A middle-aged man looked at Xiaoyang. His clothes were a little strange. There were a few clouds and a sword embroidered on it. Although it looked very fitting, it was rare to see such clothes in other places. The man had a powerful aura. He must have been nurtured by being in a high position. Behind the middle-aged man were 2 elderly men. They were both wearing armor, giving off the feeling that they were still strong despite their age. The middle-aged man's gaze fell on the airship and revealed a trace of surprise. "Young master, are you all right?" The 2 old men saw that Song Fengqing's condition was very bad and immediately went forward to support him. Xiaoyang sneered in his heart. It seemed that the atmosphere in the realm of the gods wasn't much different from other places. After beating up the small, the big one naturally had to stand up and support him. He thought that the realm of the gods was a proud place. Now it seemed that it was just SOSO. I am Song Kuin, the city lord of Anyang City. I wonder how my son offended you to be so ruthless. The middle-aged man shouted angrily. Seeing his son being beaten up like this, Sun Kuin, who had always been protective of his children, was very unhappy in his heart. Father, I came with good intentions to explain the rules of the realm of the gods to this outsider, who knew that he said that strength was the way of the king. He hit me without saying anything. Song Fengqing said with a very pitiful look. Hearing this, Xiaoyang felt that it was even more funny. This was completely the case of the guilty party complaining first. No, this was a vicious dog biting a person. Xiaoyang naturally knew that there was something fishy about this. Moreover, after this Song Kuin appeared, the way he looked at the flying ship had already changed. One could imagine that he had many thoughts about this flying ship. Therefore, under such circumstances, what was the point of saying anything more? Besides, even if Xiaoyang tried to explain, the other party wouldn't listen. How dare you? Do you know what kind of crime it is to publicly hurt a sixth-grade official in the realm of the gods? Song Kuin asked angrily. Xiaoyang shrugged with a smile and said, I don't know how big of a crime it is, but I am very clear that if someone wants to hit me and snatch my things, then I naturally don't need to be polite. It was useless to say anything now. Since the other party had already shown such an attitude, it meant that there was no way to reconcile. Therefore, Xiaoyang didn't need to lower himself to say anything. Sometimes, in the eyes of others, modesty was cowardice. Obviously, Xiaoyang wasn't such a person. Since Song Kuin didn't need to be polite, then he naturally didn't need to say anything more. Arrogant, how dare you? An old man also scolded. Obviously, they were extremely unhappy in their hearts. At the same time, they looked at Xiaoyang with anger. In Anyang City, they had always been respected and had never been treated like this. Seriously injuring a sixth-grade official and now speaking such arrogant words, he should be crippled of his cultivation and be punished by 1,000 cuts. You listen carefully. Song Kuin said as he pointed at Xiaoyang. Looking at the other party's righteous appearance, Xiaoyang couldn't help but feel a little nauseous. How could they be so shameless as to say such words? If you want to snatch my flying ship, then come and snatch it if you have the ability. Why do you need to find so many dignified reasons? Don't tell me that you don't feel disgusted? Xiaoyang said as he looked like he wanted to vomit. He really hated this method of doing things. Chapter 1536. You're just half a step away from King Wu level 8 and you're already so arrogant. You might be powerful outside, but you're just a drop in the ocean in the realm of the gods. As Song Kuin spoke, he let out a low roar and unleashed his aura, no longer hiding it. Instantly, the vast and pure energy turned into an invisible pressure that pressed down on Xiaoyang. Instantly, Xiaoyang felt as if there was an invisible mountain pressing down on his shoulders. This kind of feeling made him extremely unhappy. Regarding this, Xiaoyang could also guess the strength of his opponent. He was King Wu level 8 and was extremely powerful. Moreover, the realm of the gods was blessed by the heavens. Cultivators of the same level were much stronger than cultivators from other places. Therefore, no matter how one looked at it, Song Kuin's strength was not ordinary and would not be easy to deal with. Even though Xiaoyang's level was half a level lower than his opponent, he did not show any signs of cowardice. Instead, his eyes revealed a trace of ferocity. Immediately, he unleashed all of his power and forcefully removed the enormous pressure. After seeing that his opponent was not affected by the pressure he released, Song Kuin's heart was slightly shocked. It seemed that this person was a top genius from the outside world. Otherwise, how could he completely ignore his pressure? But so what if you're a top genius? Compared to the realm of the gods, you're just an ant-like existence. You're still an existence that can be casually crushed with one hand. It could be said that the people of the realm of the gods were extremely arrogant. However, there was a part of them that did not know. Some of the monstrous geniuses were not much different from the geniuses of the realm of the gods. They could even be on equal footing or even surpass them. "I'll cripple you now, you ungrateful brat!" Song Kuan shouted angrily. Xiao Yang did not show any signs of fear. Instead, he was a little excited. After all, he had never fought with the experts of the realm of the gods. He did not know how strong they were. Now that someone had delivered himself to his doorstep, naturally it would not be bad. In the blink of an eye, the silver lightning spear appeared in Xiao Yang's hand. Lightning continued to swirl around it. When Song Kuan saw that Xiao Yang was not remorseful at all and even wanted to challenge him, he became even angrier. However, this was exactly what Song Kuan wanted. Since the other party didn't know what was good for them, attacking them would be a capital offense. It could be said that making a move on a city, Lord of the Firmament, was a heinous crime. Immediately, Song Kuan bellowed and charged toward Xiao Yang. The two old men in armor behind him also immediately carried Song Fengqing and retreated. They were very clear about how tyrannical the city, Lord Strength, was. If the aftermath of the battle affected them, it would not be good. At this moment, Song Fengqing sneered in his heart. Now that his father had made a move, the airship was in the bag. Song Kuan's casual charge was like a falling meteor. His aura was so powerful that it could be seen how terrifying his strength was. The firmament really lived up to its name. Xiao Yang could also clearly feel the strength of the other party. The cultivators of the firmament had a unique advantage compared to the cultivators of the outside world. Therefore, their strength was much more mellow and rich. Xiao Yang was not afraid at all. Instead, he relied on the sharpness of the silver lightning spear and charged forward. If he wanted to fight, how could he be afraid at all? A firefly dares to compete with the bright moon? You're really courting death. When one of the old men saw that Xiao Yang did not evade his attack and even wanted to fight him head-on, what was this if not courting death? The cultivators of the firmament had a huge advantage compared to the cultivators of other places in the same realm. Moreover, his realm was not as high as the city lord's. This arrogant young man must have charged in from the outside world and was bursting with confidence. Therefore, he made such a move. That huge pressure made Xiao Yang very excited. If the opponent was strong enough, then it would be satisfying to fight. Boom! Song Kuan directly punched the spearhead of the silver lightning spear. He seemed to be full of confidence, as if this heaven-grade magic treasure would be shattered under this punch. However, the result was not as Song Kuan expected. Not only did the spearhead not shatter, but at the same time a rebounding force made him lose control of his body and retreat a few steps back. Immediately, Song Fengqing's expression changed. They were evenly matched. How was this possible? Father must have shown mercy. That was why this happened. That was just a test. However, Song Fengqing did not know that because his father had taken the city lord's position, he knew that his chances of improving himself were not high. Therefore, he put more effort into how to improve himself. Therefore, his strength had been stagnant for 1,000 years. At this moment, Song Kuan was extremely shocked. He did not expect his opponent's spiritual energy to be so pure. This was not to be outdone by the geniuses of the firmament. Which world was this guy from? For a moment, a few places that were not too different from the firmament flashed through Song Kuan's mind. However, the young man in front of him did not seem to be a genius from those few worlds. After Xiao Yang retreated, the blood in his body began to flow in reverse. Such a strong, rebounding force made him a little surprised. The cultivators of the firmament lived up to their reputation. Fortunately, Xiao Yang had integrated a lot of the true Lord's inheritance during this period of time, which gave birth to a lot of ingenuity. Otherwise, how could he dare to go head-to-head with Sun Kuan? Although Xiao Yang's realm did not increase, his strength increased a lot because of this. Even now, if Xiaoyang encountered an ordinary 8th level cultivator. He was confident that he could defeat him without using the explosive pill. This time, Xiaoyang was very ambitious. He wanted to use the cultivators of the firmament to test if he had the ability to do so. After stabilizing his blood, Xiaoyang pointed the tip of his spear at Song Kuan and said, "The city lord of the firmament is only so. In my opinion, your strength is not even as strong as that old dog Tian Bunu of the Thousand Thunder Realm." After hearing this, Song Kuan was about to explode in anger. As for who Tian Bunu was, he did not know. However, the Thousand Thunder Realm was only a second-rate world. What right did it have to be compared with the firmament? To Song Kuan, this was an undisguised humiliation. Furthermore, it was an extremely vicious act. The cultivators of the firmament were very arrogant. They looked down on cultivators from other worlds, except for the firmament. It could be said that it was very vicious to attack their pride in this way. What a vicious brat! How dare you be so rude? I want you to be cut into pieces and die. Song Kuan shouted angrily. Chapter 1537. Currently, Song Kuan was completely enraged. He could not accept being humiliated by his opponent in such a manner. Song Kuan understood his son well. As a father, how could he not understand his son's thoughts? It was just that he felt guilty for using such a method to humiliate himself. But now he no longer had such thoughts. Instead, he felt that Xiaoyang was a person who would not hesitate to die. As for who this person was, Song Kuan did not bother to guess or care about it. After all, he knew all the outstanding geniuses in the various realms. Those who he did not know were all small fries. There was no need to worry about them. So be it if he killed them. After sensing his opponent's anger, Xiaoyang revealed a disdainful smile. They were cultivators of the realm of the gods. Did they really think that they were gods, sacred and inviolable? If this were to spread out, it would be a joke. People would laugh their heads off. Even though the cultivators of the realm of the gods were powerful, they had the right to be arrogant. It was not a reason for them to be arrogant. There was an essential difference between arrogance and arrogance. Obviously, the cultivators of the realm of the gods had been in the realm of the gods for a long time. Their sense of superiority had caused their arrogance to fester. In the end, it became arrogance without them knowing it. In the next moment, Song Kuan roared again. Suddenly, his eyes emitted a trace of golden light. His aura was as stable as a mountain. It was extremely heavy. It was as if there was no way to break through it. It was like an insurmountable mountain. It stood there, making one unable to show their face. Looking at Song Kuan's flustered and exasperated appearance, Xiaoyang continued to sneer. At the same time, he did not intend to continue hiding his strength. It was just like what the old man who entered the realm of the gods had said. Since he was already famous, there was no point in continuing to avoid it. Instead, he would be criticized even more. Moreover, there was an unchanging truth no matter where one was. That was, one's strength was the right to speak. If others still did not agree with you, it meant that you were not strong enough. If the so-called truth still said that you were wrong, then you needed to be strong enough to defeat the truth. Xiaoyang took a deep breath. At the same time, he stabilized his aura and began to release his power. Since he had decided to fight, then he would fight. If he really caused some big trouble, he could just leave. What was there to be afraid of? What's more, he wasn't the one who initiated the trouble this time. It was all because of their greed. This young man really doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. He actually dares to insult others like this. I haven't seen the city lord so angry in over 1,000 years. His fate is already sealed. The two old men in armor also echoed each other. In their opinion, that outsider was courting death. Song Fingqing's expression also became more vicious. In his opinion, the angrier his father was, the more miserable Xiaoyang's death would be. And being able to take revenge for himself would make him feel very comfortable. He was the son of the God Realm City Lord, yet his spine had been broken by a single kick from the other party. How could he possibly feel good about this? In his opinion, Even if he cut Xiaoyang into 1,000 pieces, it wouldn't be enough to vent his anger. When Song Kuan felt that Xiaoyang's aura wasn't any weaker than his, he was slightly surprised. How was this possible? Perhaps this brat used some kind of secret technique to confuse him. In terms of strength, the strongest person in the same realm was none other than the God realm. How could an outsider who was half a realm lower than him be stronger than him? Whether it was an illusion or reality, it would be clear in this battle. In fact, Song Kuan was certain that it was an illusion. In the next moment, Song Kuan moved. His entire body moved like a falling mountain. The sound of the wind rose again and again. It was as if he had endless power and was unmatched. Although Xiaoyang's overall aura wasn't that exaggerated, it wasn't weak either. At the same time, the silver lightning spear in his hand seemed to have sensed its owner's thoughts. It continuously exploded with sounds, and the lightning energy became even more powerful, as if it was cheering. This time, Xiaoyang didn't hold back at all. Instead, he increased his speed. Boom! The two of them collided once again and were sent flying backward at the same time. Suddenly, a huge shockwave swept out like a wave. Even the flying ship that was floating at the side was hit by the shockwave and retreated a lot. The two of them were sent flying backward for 100 feet. Only then did they stabilize their bodies and stare at each other angrily. Such a collision made Xiaoyang feel extremely satisfied. It had been a long time since he encountered such an evenly matched battle. Although there were a few battles before, there was a huge gap in strength between them. Each had its own advantages and disadvantages. However, Song Kuan's heart was filled with astonishment. This was because the strength of this outsider had shocked him greatly. Where did this outsider come from? How could he have such a strong strength? This made Song Kuan feel that it was a little inconceivable. Other than the God realm, there was actually someone who could challenge someone from the God realm and not be at a disadvantage? It seems like you are better at physical strength. Although I don't know which world you are from, in front of our God realm, you are just an ant. Even if I don't cultivate my physical strength, I won't lose to you. Song Kuan said coldly. Hearing this, Xiaoyang laughed again. This Song Kuan, as the lord of a city, didn't even blush when he said such laughable jokes. His realm was higher than his, and he actually had the face to say such words. Didn't he feel ashamed? Perhaps the so-called arrogance had made them feel that they were the center of attention. As for the people from the outside world, no matter how strong they were, they would naturally be looked down upon by them. Song Fengqing was so angry that his teeth were itching. His father had attacked twice, but the other party didn't move at all. Even though his father didn't bring out his best skills, to be able to do this with just the strength of his physical body, it was enough to show how strong Xiaoyang was. The two old men in armor also realized that the situation had exceeded their expectations. This young man who could get an invitation was indeed quite capable. But so what if you were capable? You could do well in the outside world, but in the God realm, you were just an ordinary person. There was no comparison at all. Chapter 1538. It was almost impossible for the cultivators in the realm of the gods to admit the strength of the cultivators from the outside world. The arrogance in the hearts of most of the cultivators in the realm of the gods was deeply ingrained. They felt that it was only because they did not use their full strength that their opponent was able to defeat them so easily. However, once he used his full strength, his opponent would not be able to resist his powerful attack at all. In the next moment, Song Kuan's hands began to form hand seals continuously. It was obvious that he wanted to use his own martial skills to defeat Xiaoyang and make him lose his ability to fight. Song Kuan was very clear that since Xiaoyang's physical strength was so tyrannical, the toughness of his body was also extremely high. Therefore, he was not stingy in the use of martial skills. Against someone who was good at physical strength, he only needed to use his full strength to attack. For a moment, under Song Kuan's hand seals, the spiritual energy began to riot continuously. A formless pressure continued to mix together. It was as if everything was set in stone and no one could change anything. Waves of powerful energy continued to gather at this very moment. The nature of the energy was also constantly changing. Layer after layer, the energy became more and more powerful, as if it could break through everything. Feeling the powerful energy, Xiaoyang revealed a disdainful smile. Perhaps his opponent only saw the tyrannical strength of his physical body and felt that his attainments in martial skills were much weaker. In order to completely defeat a person, one only needed to defeat him in the field that he was good at. Then, it would be enough to make him unable to recover from the setback. Even if it was a competition of martial skills, Xiaoyang was not afraid at all. Previously, he relied on the power of the silver lightning spear to fight to a draw. That was under the premise that he did not use any other techniques. Could it be that the city lord is going to use that move? An old man said in shock. This was because he had not seen the city lord in action for a long time. It was even more unbelievable that the city lord used such a powerful martial skill right off the bat. Looks like the city lord is really angry. This wild kid does not know the immensity of heaven and earth. He deserves to die. The other person also said in disdain, and there was a bit of anger in his eyes. A wild brat actually dared to behave atrociously in the god realm. If that wasn't courting death, then what was it? Moreover, Xiaoyang had trampled on their dignity. This was a huge blow to their pride. They simply could not tolerate such a situation. They wanted nothing more than to skin Xiaoyang alive and tear his bones apart. However, Xiaoyang did not show the slightest fear. He also felt the strength of his opponent and did not dare to be careless. For a moment, he did not choose to use his strongest martial skill. Instead, he put away the silver lightning spear. Since they wanted to compete in martial skills, he would show them whether his attainments in martial skills were inferior to his opponent's. Even if he didn't use those tyrannical martial skills, he could still defeat him. At this moment, Song Kuin's martial skill had also been completed. He suddenly opened his eyes, and the trace of golden light became even more valiant. A faintly discernible and powerful force continued to emerge behind him. For a moment, even the space behind him gradually began to shatter. Brat, today, I'll let you have a taste of the power of the golden arrow rain. As Song Kuin spoke, he also let out a low roar. Instantly, as soon as Song Kuin's voice fell, countless golden lights appeared continuously. Like flowing arrows, they rapidly shot toward Xiaoyang. Wherever the golden arrow rain passed, the space would immediately shatter. Every sword rain was extremely tyrannical. Cultivators below King Wu's realm would probably die if they came into contact with this move. Looking at the countless golden arrow rain, Xiaoyang still looked unmoved. However, his hands quickly began to form seals. In an instant, numerous rays of light appeared around his body. This was the spiritual energy to protect his body. The power of the golden arrow rain was naturally extraordinary. It could be said that this was Song Kuin's signature move. Back then, he also relied on this move to directly kill tens of thousands of ferocious beasts. Moreover, the golden arrow rain was endless. As long as the opponent did not die, it would not stop at all. In addition to his thousands of years of practice, he had also cultivated this move to perfection. Its power was many times stronger than before. Even in the same realm, no one dared to take it head-on. If they did, they would only be seriously injured and on the verge of death. Moreover, if the opponent was in the same realm and the opponent's realm was slightly lower, they would definitely die from the arrows piercing through their hearts. Seeing this scene, Song Fengqing could not help but suck in a cold breath. His cultivation level was the lowest among those present, so he could clearly feel how terrifying the pressure and lethality of the attack was. 7 steps of the barbarian god. Just as the arrow rain was about to arrive, Xiaoyang stomped his foot. Instantly, the space began to shake because of this huge force. Those seemingly incomparably powerful flying arrows were greatly shaken and stopped for a moment. The power of a single stomp was already so terrifying. Instantly, Song Kuen's eyes were filled with disbelief. Was this guy really a monster? How could a single stomp in the void have such power? Following that, Xiaoyang took a second step, and those flying arrows that had stopped for a moment immediately shattered. Seeing this scene, Song Kuen could no longer remain calm. What was going on? Looks like you've been the city lord for too long and have forgotten the difference between a large-scale battle and a one-on-one duel, Xiaoyang said coldly. This kind of large-scale killing technique was indeed miraculous in a war. However, in a one-on-one duel, it was not that useful. After all, such a dispersion of power was not very useful against people of similar strength. On the contrary, it was somewhat of a flaw. Of course, this was also related to Song Kuen not fighting for many years. He lacked the experience of a battle and could not differentiate how to deal with different opponents. This was Song Kuen's mistake. He deserved to be defeated. Originally, Xiaoyang thought that Song Kuen was very powerful. However, now it seemed that he had been blinded by his own pride and underestimated his opponent too much. Xiaoyang took a few steps forward, and the golden arrow rain was almost completely destroyed. Xiaoyang then walked up to Song Kuen. The seventh step. Boom! With this step, Xiaoyang directly stepped on Song Kuen's head. Instantly, Song Kuen was shaken by this unparalleled tyrannical force and fell down like a meteor. Chapter 1539. Looking at this scene, the three people standing at the side were shocked. They were completely unable to accept this fact. How could the city lord be defeated by a wild brat? Moreover, the opponent's strength was one realm lower. What was the reason for this? It could be said that the scene was extremely shocking. It made people feel that it was very unreal. All along, it was very common for cultivators of the divine realm to go out and challenge those of higher realm. However, they had never seen an outsider who could challenge a cultivator of the divine realm. This simply broke their understanding. Even in their subconscious, they found it hard to believe that this was real. They must be seeing things. They rubbed their eyes. However, what they saw was that their city lord had already fallen to the ground, and that so-called wild brat was floating there as if nothing had happened. At this moment, Song Kuen's heart was also in extreme pain. Even he himself was unable to accept this fact. This was because he was afraid that no one would believe it if he told them about it. If this news were to spread, it would be a complete humiliation to him. He was afraid that he would never be able to erase it in this lifetime. Although it was an unfair victory, Xiaoyang's heart did not waver in the slightest. His opponent had underestimated him, which was why he was able to win so easily. Thus, he was unable to witness the true might of the cultivators from the celestial plane. More or less, he felt somewhat regretful. However, what could he do about it? Since the other party did not treat him as an opponent, there was no harm in destroying their self-confidence. In front of outsiders, you are all high and mighty. However, you do not recognize your own abilities. Do you feel ashamed of your previous arrogance? Xiaoyang coldly snorted and questioned. Song Fengqing did not dare to speak. Although there were countless emotions in his heart, he did not dare to burst out. This outsider's strength was too tyrannical. Therefore, it was difficult for him to be a match for him. His heart was also filled with fear. The two old men seemed to want to say something. However, when they thought about how the city lord had been kicked down and how their strength was lower, even if they said something to show off, it would only be a far-fetched slap to their own faces. It's just that I underestimated him. Suddenly, Song Kuen charged forward once again. His eyes looked as though they were about to spit out flames. Song Kuen would never allow such a huge humiliation to spread out. Otherwise, how would he be able to maintain his position as the city lord? At that time, he would also become a disgrace to the god realm. At that time, his name would go down in history, in infamy. There was only one way to prevent this matter from ever getting out, and that was to keep it a secret from the dead. As long as he killed Xiaoyang, he could pretend that nothing had happened. Up until now, Song Kuan still hadn't realized the truth. He felt that he had been careless, which was why he had suffered. If he used his full strength, then Xiaoyang would naturally not be his opponent. If I hadn't been careless, how could you have succeeded? Now you can feel true despair, Song Kuan said. Suddenly, the strength in his body skyrocketed. Now, Song Kuan could no longer remain calm. The spiritual power that emerged from his body was almost visible to the naked eye. It could be seen that he was going to fight with his life. Xiao Yang's expression became serious. A rank 8 expert was going to fight to the death. Hence, he didn't dare to be careless. Xiao Yang had seen too many cases where he had failed miserably because of his complacency. He didn't want to be like those people that he had defeated. Hence, he was very clear about his own knowledge. Careless? How much of his real strength do you think Xiao Yang has shown? Suddenly, a mighty and cold voice could be heard. Instantly, Xiao Yang was stunned. There was actually someone who knew his name. Song Kuan was puzzled at first. Then he frowned slightly, and his eyes were filled with astonishment. Is that the Xiaoyang that Lord Wuxuan mentioned? Song Kuan was hesitant. His eyes were filled with doubt. Although Anyang City was far from the center of the God realm, how could they not know about the slight movements of the wind? They had heard of Xiaoyang's name before. However, they didn't expect the person in front of them to be him. Initially, they thought that unrivaled God was just creating hype for him. They didn't expect him to be so capable. I don't think I'm mistaken. After all, I rushed here as soon as I received the news. Today, he's the only one who has entered the God realm. At this moment, a young man in silver armor appeared. However, his silver armor was different from the two old men's. This person's silver armor shone brightly. The pattern engraved on it was different. It was a tiger's head. The accessories were also very different. After the young man appeared, his gaze fell on Xiaoyang. He said, "Are you Xiaoyang?" As for whether he was or not, he would know after asking his primordial body. Xiaoyang smiled and nodded. Since his name had spread throughout the God realm, there was no need for him to continue hiding. On the contrary, the young man in silver armor before him gave him a very peculiar feeling. Haha, you're worthy of being valued by my brother. Your abilities are indeed extraordinary. You can still fight those of a higher level in the God realm. The young man laughed heartily. It was as if the young man didn't find it humiliating. Instead, he found it very interesting. However, Song Kuan was upset when he heard that. He said, "Lord Yang Sen, if I wasn't careless, how could I have taken his kick? Moreover, I haven't lost yet." Song Kuan was very unconvinced. He didn't think that he had lost. Song Kuan was a governor of a city. If he had to address Yang Sen as Lord, it seemed that Yang Sen's status was definitely not low. At the very least, it was much higher than this governor of a city. Yang Sen snorted in disdain when he heard Song Kuan's explanation. He said, "You didn't use your full strength. Did Xiaoyang use his full strength? Your level is higher than his. If you lose, so be it. How can you boast so shamelessly that you didn't use your full strength? You're really thick-skinned and shameless." Hearing those words, Song Kuan's mentality was almost about to explode. However, he didn't dare to flare up at Yang Sen. He could only suppress these bitterness in his heart. Moreover, the way Song Kuan saw it, if they went all out, Xiaoyang might not be his match either. Everything was just because he was careless. There's nothing you can do even if you're unconvinced. A loss is a loss. Is this bit of magnanimity worthy of being a governor of a city? Yang Sen also looked a little angry as he berated. Chapter 1540. Facing Yang Sen's reprimand, Song Kuan didn't dare to say anything. After all, if he offended a core figure, his future days wouldn't be good. After all, Yang Sen was a member of the royal family. At such a young age, he reached the 8th level of King Wu. It could be said that his future was boundless. In the future, he would naturally have an extraordinary position in the divine realm. Although Song Kuan was a city lord, he still had some self-awareness in his heart. Although his strength wasn't outstanding, in the face of worldly wisdom, he still did very well. That was why he had the position he had today. Reporting to Lord Yongsun, Xiao Yang barged into Anyang City, ignored my son's advice, and even injured him. If I didn't come down in time, I'm afraid I would have been killed. I hope Lord Yongsun can make the decision and get rid of this villain. Song Kuan thought of a plan and immediately reported. Since he took down Xiao Yang alone, then Yongsun's strength was much stronger than his. If he took action, how could Xiao Yang possibly be their opponent? Injuring an official for no reason could be said to be a serious crime in the divine realm. Xiao Yang stood there with a confused look on his face. After all, to the divine realm he was just an outsider. But because of Song Kuan and his son's actions, his impression of the divine realm became much worse. He didn't expect that the divine realm actually had the imperial court system. It even gave rise to a lot of corruption because of it. One had to say that under the high and mighty divine realm's strict hierarchy, it also gave birth to a lot of malignant tumors. Song Kuan, how could it be that I don't know what kind of character you and your son have? How could I not know why you were able to sit on the city, Lord's seat in Anyang City, for 1,000 years? Yongsun glanced at the flying ship and said coldly. It could be said that Song Kuan also had the opportunity to get the position because of opportunism. He also had some real ability in governance. That was why he could be as unmoving as a mountain in Anyang City for 1,000 years. This reprimand also made Song Kuan's heart jump. What was going on? Why was Yongsun's attitude towards Xiao Yang so different? My lord, what are you talking about? If you speak so casually, then even if you are a relative of the royal family, I will still go to the celestial emperor to seek justice. Song Kuan changed his humble attitude from before and became unyielding. Song Kuan, who was well versed in the ways of the world, knew very well that if he didn't use a tough attitude at this time, he would be at the mercy of others. However, Yongsun seemed to understand Song Kuan very well. He said coldly, "To say it, when I have time, I will report your actions of bending the law for personal gain to the higher-ups. At that time, as for the results of the God Emperor's investigation, we'll leave it to fate." Song Kuan's brows furrowed unconsciously when he heard this, because he was very clear that Yongsun's right to speak was no small matter. "If that's the case, then I'll send a letter to you in time. You're harboring a sinner." Song Kuan's tone had changed. It was as if he was the righteous party. When Yongsun heard this, he naturally knew Song Kuan's tricks. However, Yongsun also had his own confidence. How could he possibly have the slightest fear? "I won't stop you. When the time comes, we'll wait for the God Emperor's decision." Yongsun still didn't care. He turned to look at Xiao Yang and said, "Let's go." As soon as he finished speaking, Yongsun ignored Song Kuan and the others and flew forward. Although Xiao Yang felt that it was a little strange, he knew that Yongsun was here to help him out, so he immediately followed him. Since Yongsun was unrivaled God's younger brother, he must have known about Lin Huang. Of course, Xiao Yang didn't completely trust Yongsun. After all, he had just arrived in the God realm and didn't know many things yet. He didn't know what was going on, so it was better to be cautious. After all, one must always be vigilant. If you don't put the flying ship away, do you want to be in the same situation as Song Kuan and his son again? Yongsun said helplessly. Yongsun didn't know if Xiao Yang was really stupid or what, but he felt very helpless. This guy didn't know how crazy these people in the God realm were about Princess Mingzhu's invitation. He even showed it off outside. Wasn't that just looking for trouble? Of course, Xiao Yang couldn't be blamed for this. He didn't think much of the invitation and thought it was nothing special. "I'm sorry." Xiao Yang chuckled awkwardly. He then waved his hand and put the flying ship away. What he did was indeed suspicious of being ostentatious. However, Xiao Yang thought that people would think that he was powerful and wouldn't cause trouble for him if he steered the flying ship forward. However, he never thought that the people in the god realm would be so arrogant that they couldn't differentiate reality. Instead, they thought that he was a fat sheep that could be slaughtered. Yang Sun shook his head helplessly. He felt that Xiao Yang was too different from the person unrivaled God was talking about. However, Yang Sun wasn't discouraged because of this. After all, Xiao Yang's strength was there for all to see. It was understandable that he was a little slow sometimes. May I know where Brother Unrivaled God is now? Xiao Yang thought for a moment and asked. When he was in the outer realm, Unrivaled God's big mouth had already caused him a lot of trouble. Now that he was in the God realm, he had made a name for himself out of nowhere. Therefore, he was afraid that it would cause him a lot of trouble. If he didn't pay him a proper visit, how could he be worthy of Unrivaled God's kindness? He's in closed-door cultivation because he wants to enter the tomb of the God of Sin. I'm afraid he'll only appear when the tomb of the God of Sin opens, Yang Sun said nonchalantly. Xiao Yang frowned slightly and said, That's a pity. I can't pay him a proper visit now. When Yang Sun heard Xiao Yang emphasizing the word visit, he knew what was on Xiao Yang's mind. He smiled bitterly. But you don't have to worry. Brother Unrivaled told me to take good care of you when you come to the God realm. Yang Sun emphasized the word take good care of. It was obvious that he was referring to something else. For a moment, the atmosphere became a little strange because of the two's conversation. Xiao Yang seemed to have also sensed the hint of gunpowder. His eyebrows furrowed slightly as an ominous premonition arose in his heart. If that's the case, thank you very much, brother, Xiao Yang said with a smile. Yang Sun shook his head nonchalantly and said, It's nothing. You don't have to thank me. Moreover, the God realm has always respected powerhouses. However, as soon as Yang Sun finished speaking, he glanced at his feet. It was a boundless plain with barely any signs of life. He stopped in his tracks and stopped moving forward. Chapter 1541. Yang Sun glanced at Xiao Yang with some emotions in his eyes. There was even a hint of provocation in them, as if saying, Come and hit me then. Immediately after that, Yang Sun's body sank and he quickly descended. How could Xiao Yang not understand the meaning behind that meaningful glance? Just now, the words between them were already tit for tat. Xiao Yang did not cower in the slightest and followed him. After landing, a strange smile appeared on Yang Sun's face. He stretched his muscles and said, I've always been curious about how powerful you are from Brother Wushuang. There's no one here. How about we spar a little? Yang Sun had always been a battle-hungry person, especially when he faced experts. He would be very excited. When he heard Unrivaled God mention Xiao Yang, he was already tempted. Moreover, he had told his colleagues to inform him immediately if they discovered Xiao Yang had entered the God realm. It seems that private fights are prohibited in the God realm, Xiao Yang said with a shrug. However, Yang Sun laughed disdainfully when he heard that. He said, Private fights are prohibited? You beat up Song Fengqing badly, but you also beat up the Anyang city governor? Xiao Yang felt a little embarrassed when he heard that. Moreover, he had no choice in the situation. If he had not been forced to, why would he have attacked? Moreover, the spiritual energy in the God realm was so rich that he could not even wait to find a paradise to cultivate. Why would he have the time to stir up trouble? Stop pretending. Let's fight and get to know each other. How about that? If anything happens, I'll take responsibility. Moreover, we're sparring, not having a private fight. Yang Sun said anxiously. All along, Yang Sun had been sparring with others in the God realm. However, because of his status, many people did not dare to use their full strength. This made Yang Sun feel very aggrieved. After Unrivaled God told him about his travels outside the God realm, especially after hearing about how powerful the geniuses outside were, Yang Sun wanted to see for himself. Although there were already some geniuses from outside the God realm, They were either too weak or too powerful for him to fight. Now that unrivaled god had mentioned Xiao Yang's name, Lin Huang was even more excited. He wanted to know just how powerful an opponent like Xiao Yang was. Xiao Yang felt helpless. He knew that today's battle was unavoidable. However, on second thought, it was fine if it was just a normal sparring session. He did not have enough fun fighting with Song Kuan earlier. Yang Sen's current abilities did not look weak. It could be said that strength was very important. Yang Sen probably couldn't suppress the Anyang city lord with just his status. Since that is the case, I will accept your challenge. Xiao Yang also cupped his hands together, looking as if he was ready to spar. Since the other party had already made such a request, how could Xiao Yang back down? It was hard to turn down such an offer, which made him feel a little uncomfortable. However, since they had already decided, they could not back off. Moreover, Yang Sen was right. No discord, no concord. He could only gain Yang Sen's recognition and respect if he displayed his powerful abilities. It would be easy for others to look down on him if he kept on being humble and evasive. Hence, under such circumstances, there was no reason for Xiao Yang to avoid the battle. Yang Sen's face lit up when he heard that. That was more like it. Therefore, he was very satisfied with Xiao Yang. With the battle imminent, Yang Sen's expression turned serious. He said, I'm King Wu, rank 8. You're one rank lower than me, but that's fine. I heard that you have an explosive pill that can forcibly raise your rank. This way, our ranks will be on par, and it won't be a fair fight. Xiao Yang raised his eyebrows slightly when he heard that. The way he looked at Yang Sen changed again. This unrivaled god is such a blabbermouth. This guy knows everything about me. It seemed like Lin Huang had to be on guard against him in the future. Otherwise, Shen Wushuang might expose all of Lin Huang's trump cards. That was not a good thing at all. Does Shen Wushuang like to tell others everything? Xiao Yang asked helplessly. Yang Sen shrugged helplessly and said, My brother doesn't have that much free time. He's only doing this because he wants to build momentum for you. Xiao Yang was speechless when he heard that. I really can't accept his good intentions. Xiao Yang gritted his teeth as he spoke. It seemed like he had to have a good talk with Shen Wushuang when he met him. He would give him a massage when the time came and let him feel the pain. Soon after, Yang Sen's gaze turned serious, and he said, You don't know how many people in God capital see you as an enemy. My brother said that you're determined to win Sister Mingzhu over. Many admirers want to beat you up to prove themselves. Xiao Yang was about to go crazy when he heard Yang Sen say that. It seems like Shen Wushuang's ability to sow discord is extraordinary, Xiao Yang said helplessly. Yang Sen was secretly laughing to himself. He could feel Xiao Yang's helplessness. He had not even reached the God realm yet, but Shen Wushuang had already made all the arrangements. Shen Wushuang had even voluntarily given up a spot for Xiao Yang in the God Realm tournament. Of course, Shen Wushuang would not have had to go into closed-door cultivation if he had not given up his spot for Xiao Yang. Although my brother's method was a little wrong, he still meant well. You'll know in the future. As Yang Sen spoke, he hesitated for a moment and did not continue, as if he had some concerns. Seeing Yang Sen's hesitant expression, Xiao Yang was a little confused. What exactly was the situation now? Since Yang Sen was hesitant to speak, Xiao Yang naturally did not continue to ask. Since the God realm had a strict hierarchy, there must be some taboos in it. Let's not talk about my brother for now. Hurry up and take the outburst pill. Let's spar first. If anyone finds out, we'll have to spend a lot of time explaining. That's too troublesome, Yang Sen said impatiently at this moment. Although Yang Sen said that they were sparring, it would be hard to say if anyone found out. Sparring without the God Realm's approval would be considered a private fight. That was why Yang Sen had brought Xiao Yang to this deserted place to avoid being discovered. Seeing this, Xiao Yang hesitated for a moment before taking out the outburst pill and swallowing it immediately. Chapter 1542. Initially, Xiao Yang did not want to take the outburst pill. He wanted to use this battle to test how powerful he had become. But if he didn't use it, Yang Sun would probably look down on him a little. Therefore, although Xiaoyang did not want to, he had to do it. It was taboo to disrespect one's opponent. Moreover, although Yang Sun wanted to fight wholeheartedly, he did not look down on Lin Huang at all. After taking the outburst pill, Xiaoyang's level rose all the way to King Wu rank 8. His entire aura became stronger because of the effects of the pill. However, his aura was inevitably a little loose. Yang Sun's eyes widened in shock when he sensed that Lin Huang's level had risen all of a sudden. He was dumbfounded. He had always thought that unrivaled God had exaggerated the effects of the pill. Even the alchemists in the God realm could not produce a pill that could rapidly increase one's abilities without leaving any side effects. On the other hand, Xiaoyang had directly increased his own strength. This was truly unbelievable. Because of this, everyone was looking forward to it even more. It seemed that unrivaled God had not lied to him. He did not exaggerate to hype things up. He was just telling the truth. The more this was the case, the more excited Yang Sun became. Since Xiao Yang's combat strength was very real, then he could fight to his heart's content. Yang Sun, who had not fought for a long time, felt that his bones were a little limp. He moved a little and immediately made cracking sounds. He was now in a very excited state. Seeing that you swallowed it without hesitation, it seems that there really are no side effects, Yang Sun said with a little envy. Xiaoyang shook his head and said, "Of course there are no side effects if I take one in a short period of time. If I take more, it'll be more taxing on my body." Yang Sun naturally understood what he meant. The so-called no side effects were only because the damage to the body was not that great. It could be ignored. If he were to take it multiple times in a short period of time, it would exceed his body's ability to bear the burden. Naturally, it would not do. You only have 1 hour, and then we will stop trembling. Do it. As Yang Sun spoke, a golden light flashed in his hand. Suddenly, a long spear appeared in his hand. The long spear glittered with golden light. Xiaoyang didn't hold back. The silver lightning spear appeared in his hand, and the power of lightning crackled continuously. I didn't think that it would actually be a low-level saint-grade magic tool. It's indeed different, Yang Sun said with a smile. These words stunned Xiaoyang. He had always thought that the silver lightning spear was in existence at the peak of the heaven rank. Now that he thought about it carefully when he was in the Wild Thunder secret realm, he heard Lei Dingyin say that the Holy Thunder Hammer was a divine weapon, so he subconsciously thought that it was a divine weapon. From the looks of it, since the Holy Thunder Hammer started with the word saint, it must be a saint-level magical treasure, not a divine-level one. The heavenly Qin Mountain was similar to the Holy Lightning Hammer on the flying ship. It was probably a saint-tier weapon and not a god-tier one. Stop when it's appropriate. Xiaoyang didn't change his mind because he thought that a saint-tier weapon was a god-tier weapon. Instead, he was looking forward to it. Yang Sun nodded and said, "Of course. The golden aurora spear in my hand isn't inferior to yours. Be careful." As he spoke, Yang Sun growled and waved the magic tool in his hand. He directly charged toward Xiaoyang. Since he was fully prepared, he should end the battle quickly. He made his move. Suddenly, Yang Sun looked like a stream of light, fast and sharp. When Xiaoyang saw the other party charging towards him, the silver lightning spear in his hand also danced quickly. Clang! The two spears collided, and the two of them fought together. Immediately, the aftermath of the collision surged out continuously, and the sound of explosions was endless. Yang Sun's spear technique was very exquisite. It was obvious that he had done a lot of research on spear techniques. Every time he attacked, he was very experienced and no flaws could be found. On the other hand, Xiaoyang relied on his own battle experience to deal with it. In addition, there were also insights on spear techniques in the inheritance of the Supreme. Xiaoyang even learned some spear techniques along the way, so his understanding was not shallow. In addition, Xiao Yang's physical strength wasn't weak either, so he didn't fall into a disadvantageous position. As the two of them fought fiercely, they became more and more excited because they were evenly matched. They hadn't met such an evenly matched opponent for a long time, so when they attacked, they didn't hold back. At this moment, Xiao Yang's understanding of the realm of the gods changed again. It seemed that the cultivators in the realm of the gods were indeed different from the cultivators in the outside world. Take Yang Sun, for example. The depth of his spiritual energy was almost catching up with Yi Shiwen's. Now Yang Sun was even more surprised in his heart because Xiao Yang's strength had also surprised him a little. The development of this matter had completely exceeded his expectations. He didn't know whether it was Xiao Yang's strength that was too strong or the effect of the elixir that was too heaven-defying. When he felt that the power released by the other party was much stronger than his, he was even more surprised. Yang Sun had never encountered such a situation before. However, the more it was like this, the more competitive Yang Sun's heart was. He wanted to defeat Xiao Yang. However, he was also very conflicted. Xiao Yang's realm was one level lower than his. If he defeated Xiao Yang, it would be a little unfair. Although Yang Sun had more thoughts in his mind, his hands didn't stop at all. Instead, they became more and more violent. Xiao Yang also relied on the spear techniques learned from the Supreme's inheritance to forcefully fight back. It was a draw. On the other hand, the area around them had become a scene of devastation because of their fierce battle. Even though the two of them did not use any large-scale destructive martial skills, just the ripples of their powers were enough to destroy the land. Now, the two of them were fighting with high fighting spirit. They didn't give in to each other. The original spar also gradually changed. Xiao Yang used the 7 steps of the barbaric steps to change his position. He wanted to use tyrannical power to suppress Yang Sun. Yang Sun, on the other hand, used a rather exquisite movement technique and cleverly dispelled Xiao Yang's suppression. The two of them exchanged blows, and there was blood on their bodies. Who is so bold to have a private fight in my territory? At this moment, an old and dignified voice sounded. Chapter 1543. Hearing the scolding. Xiao Yang and Yang Sun did not dare to continue fighting. They quickly separated and kept their weapons. After exchanging glances, they understood each other's thoughts and knew what to say next. At the same time, the two of them quickly calmed their breathing to prevent any flaws from appearing. They also took out pills to forcefully heal the wounds on their bodies. From time to time, they would see a strong-looking old man in armor flying over. Xiao Yang looked at the old man and did not feel anything in his heart. Instead, he felt that it was strange. Was the realm of gods so strict about private fights? This was really unexpected. As for the reason behind this, he did not know. However, after Yang Sun saw the old man, he clearly heaved a sigh of relief. "Commander Yang, we are not having a private fight." Yang Sun's smiling face was extremely bright, just like a child acting coquettishly. The old man rolled his eyes at Yang Sun, but there was also some pity in his eyes. However, very quickly his face became serious. "Yang Sun, do you think that you can spout nonsense just because you are a member of the royal family? Or do you think that this old man's eyesight is blurry or that my mind is muddled and I can't see clearly what you're doing?" Commander Yang scolded angrily. Hearing this reprimand, Yang Sun drooped his head with an aggrieved expression. Seeing Yang Sun's appearance, Xiao Yang felt helpless in his heart. However, he was sure that Yang Sun and Commander Yang had a good relationship. Otherwise, it would not be like this. The reason why Yang Sun chose this place to fight was very obvious. It was because he was related to the person in charge of this place, so it was easier to talk to him. Yang Sun immediately ran over and massaged Commander Yang's shoulders. He said, "We are really just fooling around. We are not having a private fight. Commander, you are wise and powerful. Naturally, it is impossible for you to be muddle-headed. Instead, it is possible that you have become sensitive because you are too nervous. Hearing this, Commander Yang shook his shoulders and shook off Yang Sun's hands. He said, "Do you think that I don't know your temperament? Back then, when you were my subordinate, your cultivation was also lacking. Otherwise, you would have even challenged this old man." As soon as these words came out, it was even more certain that the relationship between Commander Yang and Yang Sun was not shallow. "To tell you the truth, I would like to have a taste of your skills, Commander," Yang Sun said with an aggrieved expression. The moment these words came out, it angered Commander Yang until he blew his beard and glared. Pointing at Yang Sun, he scolded, "You brat! Looks like I didn't teach you enough back then. Tell me, what kind of crime is fighting in the God realm, and how should we punish them?" Seeing that Commander Yang was angry, Yang Sun also ran away like a wisp of smoke. Yang Sun hugged Xiao Yang's shoulder and said, "Fellow Taoist Xiao Yang and I love each other. It's fine for us to play around when we have nothing to do. But Commander Yang, I suspect that you're really old and blind. You can't tell what's going on." As he spoke, Yang Sun also pursed his lips, as if he had suffered a great grievance. Xiao Yang lowered his head and looked at the devastated land. He also laughed bitterly and helplessly in his heart. Immediately, he also nodded his head and agreed with Yang Sun's viewpoint. Just what would happen to fighting privately in the God realm, Xiao Yang was not clear either. But since it was strictly prohibited, the severity of the punishment would probably not be light either. Hearing Xiao Yang these two words, Commander Yang's eyes also turned slightly intent. Obviously, he had also heard some rumors about it. "Why? Feel that your strength increased somewhat and you're lawless and out of control?" Commander Yang also scolded. Hearing these words, Yang Sun did not care in the slightest. He had an appearance like everything had nothing to do with him. In any case, he insisted that this was a fight and not a personal fight. All of a sudden, Yang Sun seemed to have thought of something and said, "Ha! You, this rotten old man, arrived long ago. To actually still pretend to be crazy and play the fool with me here. Truly disrespectful as an old man. I still have many capabilities. You can see even more if you continue to hide." When Yang Sun, who was originally still somewhat guilty, said these words rather confidently instead, "If I still don't come out with your characters, most likely the major powers within a radius of 1,000 miles can all feel the aftermath of your battle. At that time, even if you have 1,000 mouths, it will also be hard to absolve yourself." Commander Yang said with an appearance like he did not know how to appreciate kindness. Hearing these words, Yang Sun's entire attitude also changed once more. He ran over sneakily and continued to massage Commander Yang's back. "Like I said, it's still you who dotes on me," Yang Sun said. "Glib tongue." Commander Yang rolled his eyes at Yang Sun and said rather discontentedly. Yang Sun just nodded his head like he was pounding garlic and said, "In the future, this kid will bring a few more bottles of good wine to show filial respect to you, senior. At least you have some conscience." Commander Yang was very pleased. Suddenly, his expression changed slightly, and he pretended to be angry and said, "What? Didn't eat." Yang Sun did not mind being reprimanded either. He just increased the strength of his hands. "You're Xiao Yang? Your strength is indeed not bad. Apart from the 10 great realms, it's rare for a formidable figure like you to appear," Commander Yang said. While Xiao Yang took a step forward and said with clasped hands, "Senior, you brat, learn more from others. Look at other people's etiquette. You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth the whole day, talking nonsense," Commander Yang said very discontentedly. All along, Commander Yang treated Yang Sun as himself. Back then, when he was under his command, he even taught him all of his abilities. Now that he was old, that was why he left the divine capital and came here to protect the peace of this region. Yang Sun did not refute either, just nodding his head. Immediately, the three people also exchanged conventional greetings for a while. Yang Sun suddenly thought of something and said, "Commander Yang, you're close to Anyang City here. Did Song Kuen, that fellow, do you know anything that crossed the line?" Hearing this, Commander Yang rolled his eyes at Yang Sun. He knew that this guy definitely got into trouble again. How did you offend him? Commander Yang asked unhappily. Immediately, Yang Sun and Xiao Yang recounted what happened earlier. After hearing this matter, Commander Yang smiled and said, "This Song Kuan has always been sly when doing things. I don't have any obvious evidence that can be used against him. Even if everyone knows, it's tacit understanding. There's no evidence." Hearing this, Yang Sun immediately looked like a deflated balloon. Originally, he came here for the sake of convenience, and then plead with his master to help him get Song Kuan off the stage. But now, things seem to have become a little difficult. But you don't have to worry. Many things are tacit understanding. But if you speak, there might be changes, Commander Yang said. Chapter 1544. This was the convenience of having the identity of a member of the imperial family. Sometimes one unintentional remark could make many people scramble like a flock of ducks. Moreover, fawning over those in power would trigger many chain reactions. Hearing this, Yang Sun also understood in his heart. He nodded and said, "Many thanks for the guidance, Commander." Commander Yang rolled his eyes at Yang Sun. He naturally knew what kind of temperament this guy had. He just smiled and did not say anything. Immediately, the three of them exchanged pleasantries for a while. Of course, the pleasantries were mainly spoken by Xiao Yang. After chatting for a while, Yang Sun then left with Xiao Yang. After all, Commander Yang oversaw a region. Although it was said that the divine realm had always been peaceful and there would not be any mishaps, the righteousness in their bones made them not neglect their duties. From Yang Sun's mouth, Xiao Yang also learned some of Commander Yang's deeds. When this old man was young, he was an illustrious guard. His achievements were high and his drive was strong, making many influential people tremble in fear and had no choice but to respect him. Of course, it was also because of this temperament that caused many influential people to not tolerate him. When he was old, he was assigned to this place to guard. But it was also good here, lest he caused any trouble, and it would not be easy for everyone to clean up. After all, although Commander Yang had a righteous temperament, he did his best in everything. His contributions were high, so it was not bad to retire here. On the way back, Yang Sun also started to give Xiao Yang a general idea of the divine realm. The reason why the divine realm was so peaceful was because of the strict registration system. Moreover, this was also the imperial court system. The officials were divided into ranks, and each had their own duties. Even private fights would be judged as a serious crime. The light punishment was detention for a few days. If the influence was bad, the death penalty was even possible. After having a general understanding of the divine realm, Xiao Yang's heart was also filled with sorrow. This series of measures in the divine realm was most likely for the sake of harmonious development. Of course, there was also that formless aura that was brewing. If it was in other places, doing this was not much different from sealing the country. The consequence of doing so was most likely to cause the strength of this world to start to weaken. However, the immortal realm was different. They were blessed by the heavens and could allow one's cultivation to advance by leaps and bounds. Of course, under such a strict system, many people were unwilling to be inferior, and their thirst for strength would be even more intense. Therefore, under such circumstances, many people were forced to change their status and work harder to squeeze into the high position that they had always dreamed of in order to change the fate of their family. In the divine world, a person with a higher rank could suppress others to death. This point was also vividly displayed. Of course, if he wanted to be in a high position, his own strength could not be weak. It had to be said that the Jianghu conflicts on the surface were completely gone, but the competition in the dark was very fierce. The battle on the surface had turned into a battle in the dark. Furthermore, the divine realm only prohibited private duels. If one obtained the approval of the divine palace, they could still duel. Brother Xiao, if you find a fortuitous opportunity in the divine world, you must be careful and not act rashly. All the opportunities in the God, realm belong to the divine palace. How they are distributed is up to the local officials, Yang Sun said. Hearing this, Xiaoyang raised his eyebrows slightly. If that was the case, there might not be any so-called fortuitous opportunities in the divine world. It would be up to others to distribute them. This made Xiaoyang more or less unhappy. At the same time, he also understood one thing in his heart. The fortuitous opportunities in the divine world were very troublesome. Moreover, he was not from the divine world. Even if something were to appear, it was not something that he could meddle in. Yang Sun also changed the way he addressed Xiaoyang. Although they had yet to show off their skills, they both knew in their hearts that the other party was not weaker than them based on a competition of spear techniques alone. In the divine world, Yang Sun could indeed meet opponents who were on par with him. However, this was not necessarily the case in the outside world. Moreover, Xiaoyang's level was not as high as his. Although Xiaoyang's strength was increased by pills and was about the same as his, it was inevitable that there would be some difference in terms of comprehension. In addition to the battle results that Unrivaled God had mentioned before, many things became very clear after a little verification. However, Brother Xiao, you don't have to feel that it's a pity. After all, the places in the divine world that might contain fortuitous opportunities have long been dug up. The reason why the divine world banned private battles back then was because of the appearance of a few precious treasures that caused countless cultivators to participate in the battle. The casualties were too great, that's why it was like this, Yang Sun explained very patiently. Xiaoyang smiled slightly when he heard this. Naturally, he knew that when some treasures were born, it would naturally cause fights, not to mention the distant ones, just in the Wild Thunder secret realm. Xiaoyang had encountered a lot of trouble. For the sake of an opportunity, Lei Dingyin used his and Bai Jian's lives as stepping stones. Now I can understand why Unrivaled God left the divine world. When he told me that he was tracking down the whereabouts of the airship, I'm afraid it was just an excuse, Xiaoyang said with a grin. Yang Sun nodded and said, that's indeed the case. Brother Unrivaled felt that the divine world was too old-fashioned, so he wanted to go out and look for opportunities. That's why he stopped the job of tracking down the airship. Judging from Yang Sun's tone, it would not be easy to leave the divine world. Such a sealed world was really quite shocking. In the end, Xiaoyang thought for a long time and could only describe this place as ancient. Xiaoyang even felt that he had come to the divine world a little too early. He had originally planned to look for opportunities somewhere in these 2 years, but now it seemed that it was completely impossible. Fortunately, the spiritual power in the divine world was thicker, so it was also a very good place to cultivate. After 3 days of flying, Xiaoyang followed Yang Sun to a city towering in the clouds. It was a huge city that was built on top of the clouds, which was similar to the upper realm in this regard. However, the scale of this was incomparable to the upper level. The city could be said to be huge and magnificent, shining with golden light. It was as if the city walls were made of gold. It was oppressively rich. Looking at the incomparably huge city, Xiaoyang could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. Just one side of the city could be said to be endless. It was truly difficult to imagine just how big the city was. This is the #1 city in the divine world, God's capital. Yang Sun beamed and introduced proudly. Chapter 1545. Xiaoyang was full of admiration as he looked at the majestic Shindu. It must have been a massive project to build such a huge city. It could even be described as a work of the gods. It was indeed the most powerful generation in the 3,000 worlds. It was so powerful that it was eye-catching. How big is Shindu? Xiaoyang suppressed the shock in his heart and asked in disbelief. Xiaoyang had seen many cities along the way, and they were all very majestic and huge. However, compared to the divine capital above his head, the difference was like heaven and earth. It could even be said that the materials used to build Shindu were something that the drifting cloud realm could not bear. Although the upper realm of the drifting cloud realm was also built above the clouds, It was a world of difference compared to Shindu. Shindu is vast. I don't know exactly how big it is. After all, I don't have the time to go to every corner of Shindu, Yang Sun said with a smile. His words revealed his boundless pride in Shindu. After all, Shindu could be said to be the most outstanding place in the 3,000 worlds. It could even be said to be one of the wonders of the world. Although they would not say that it was number one, they knew that it was not much different from being number one. These words undoubtedly revealed the vastness of Shindu. Yang Sun had not been able to go to every corner of Shindu, which showed how vast it was. Xiao Yang was also very shocked. At the same time, he could also feel that the aura of Shindu above him was extraordinary. Let's go up. Yang Sun finished speaking and quickly flew up. Xiao Yang did not hesitate and followed closely behind. After reaching the clouds, Xiao Yang landed with Yang Sun. He saw that the stone slabs on the ground were not ordinary slabs. Instead, they were made of white jade. It could be said that it was very luxurious. Brother Xiao, flying is forbidden above Shindu. This is also the prohibition of Shindu. If you violate it, you will be killed by the formation. Even if the formation can't kill you, the guards in the divine capital will do the same, Yang Sun said solemnly. The divine capital was the capital of the gods' world. Moreover, it was built above the clouds. It could be said that it was the holy land of everyone in the gods' world. If anyone dared to cross this natural moat, it would be equivalent to humiliating them. Therefore, he could only die. Hearing this, Xiao Yang also nodded solemnly. He also knew that this was not a joke, especially in a world with such great power and the imperial court system. Face was especially important. As he stood on Shindu's soil, Xiao Yang sensed that the density of the spirit qi there was several times higher than that of the ground below. Even if a piece of trash stayed in Fairy's capital, as long as he cultivated for a long time, it would only be a matter of time before he broke through to King Wu's level. Of course, it was impossible for something like this to happen in Fairy's capital. Being able to enter and live in the divine capital was a symbol of status. Furthermore, there was a limit to this amount. The higher-ups of the gods' world were not fools. How could they give such a good opportunity to a piece of trash instead of a genius? Being able to cultivate here would definitely yield twice the results with half the effort. Brother Xiao, are you surprised? The density of the spirit qi in Fairy's capital is enough for us to break through to King Wu's level in a short time. However, you also know that it will depend on your own comprehension, Yang Sun said. Xiao Yang was already clear about this in his heart. However, the prosperity and vastness of Fairy's capital had exceeded Xiao Yang's expectations. To Xiao Yang, the gods' world could not even be considered a member of the 3,000 small worlds. With such unique advantages, it would not be an exaggeration to call it a middle world. However, Xiao Yang did not know why the gods' world had not become a middle world after so long. However, the reason behind this was still worth thinking about. Seeing that Xiao Yang was not shocked to the point of being stunned, Yang Sun was also a little curious. What was going on? At the same time, he also felt a little disappointed. Could it be that the gods' capital's influence and degree of shock was not that big anymore? However, how could Yang Sun know that the reason why Xiao Yang was shocked was because he had seen too much in the flowing cloud world? After a long time, suddenly seeing such a big scene, he felt a little unfamiliar in his heart. At the same time, there were also some changes. There are many prohibitions in Fairy's capital. I can't finish talking about them in a short time. This time, Brother Xiao is only here for the great competition of the gods' world. Hence, I won't say much. Just don't get into conflicts with others and walk around randomly, Yang Sun said indifferently. Xiao Yang also nodded very straightforwardly. With the density of the spirit qi in Fairy's capital, he really did not want to go out. After cultivating in seclusion for 2 years, he might be able to have a breakthrough in his level. Shortly after, Yang Sun led Xiao Yang forward. Very quickly, they arrived at the city gate. The city wall could be said to be glittering with golden light as if it was poured with gold. However, Xiao Yang could see that this was not ordinary gold. It was an extremely rare material. Just this city wall alone was probably enough to make the top sects in the upper realm go bankrupt. In front of the gate, there were 2 guards in golden armor holding long halberds. The 2 of them stood there like statues, unmoving like mountains. Although the 2 guards in golden armor were expressionless, they gave off a kind of imposing feeling without being angry. At the same time, Xiaoyang was also a little surprised. The 2 guards in golden armor guarding the city gate were King Wu level 8 existences. How terrifying! Could it be that King Wu level 8 existences were everywhere in the gods' world? It could be said that there were as many King Wu level 8 existences as there were hairs on a cow in the gods' world. As long as one had the aptitude, they would be sent to Fairy's capital to be forged. However, many people had reached King Wu level 8 long ago, but could not advance even half a step in their lifetime. The gods' world was blessed by nature and could create a group of very strong backbone forces. However, the top forces could only depend on fate. After reaching King Wu level 8, it was very difficult to continue to break through the level. It could be said that many people were trapped in King Wu level 8. This was also a headache in the gods' world. The guards in golden armor glanced at Yang Sun. Obviously, they knew each other. Soon, their gazes fell on Xiaoyang. They were very curious about the arrival of this outsider. They naturally saw Xiaoyang's level clearly. A cultivator who was not even at King Wu level 8 was actually worthy of Yang Sun's personal greeting. Who exactly was this person, and what was his identity? "Young Master Yang Sun, if you don't have a pass, we won't let you in," said one of the guards in golden armor. Chapter 1546. Even though Yang Sun was a relative of the imperial family and had great achievements in the military and was seen as an important figure in the god realm in the future, he was not qualified to casually bring an outsider into the god's capital. God's capital was the core of the god's realm. One would need the god's abode's permission to enter this place. If Yang Sun had not brought Xiaoyang along, they would have expelled him a long time ago. Yang Sun didn't mind and said, "Brother Xiao, take out your invitation letter and let them see." Xiaoyang was stunned. He did not have an invitation letter. However, he was even more confused when he saw Yang Sun winking at him. He had no idea what was going on. Although the 2 gold-armored guards were expressionless, he could almost feel the disdain they felt for someone who was trying to bluff his way out of this. Yang Sun was also very anxious. He said, "The airship." Regarding this, Yang Sun felt rather helpless in his heart. However, on second thought, it was Xiaoyang's first time in such a magnificent place. It was normal for him to be a little confused. Oh! Xiaoyang came to a sudden realization when he heard this. The airship was the invitation letter Princess Mingzhu had sent out for the banquet. With this item, one would naturally be qualified to enter God's capital. Xiaoyang used his mind, and the airship's shadow loomed behind him. Of course, this item could not be fully displayed. It was simply too huge. The 2 gold-armored guards waved their hands when they saw this, indicating that they understood. They let Xiaoyang put away the airship. "Young Master Yang Sun, there are still 2 years before the banquet. Isn't this a little too early?" The gold-armored guard said. Yang Sun said nonchalantly, "Too early? Some people arrived a few years ago." "That's because someone invited them," the gold-armored guard said. Yang Sun's expression changed slightly. He said, "Are unrivaled gods and my invitations not considered invitations?" The 2 of them were speechless at that moment. They immediately opened up a path. After all, Xiaoyang already had a pass, and he also had an influential official as his guide. There was no need for them to be so conflicted. After all, even if something happened, there was Yang Sun to shoulder it. However, the way the 2 golden-armored guards looked at Xiaoyang changed slightly. Naturally, they had heard of unrivaled God's name. Not only that unrivaled God had been talking about one person ever since he returned. The person in front of them was most likely the person he was talking about, Xiaoyang. However, When he saw it today, he couldn't see anything extraordinary about it. But on second thought, since Yang Sun was so polite to him, he must have some real ability and something extraordinary. Xiao Yang felt a little unhappy being stared at as if he was a rare commodity worth hoarding. He followed Yang Sun's footsteps and quickly entered Shindu. After entering the divine capital, the first thing that came into view were the pavilions and terraces. The outer area was not very tall, but the further in one looked, the more tall buildings one could see. There were also pagodas, skyscrapers, cornices, and so on. It was overwhelming. On the streets, there was also a bustling crowd. However, although this place looked like a marketplace, it did not have the clamor of a marketplace. The streets were very quiet. Some people who had set up stalls stood there without saying a word. Although some of them were walking together, their voices were very low. Xiao Yang sensed that almost all of these people were above King Wu's level. This shocked him greatly. There weren't many King Wu in the upper level. However, in Shendu, one could see many as soon as one opened one's eyes. It was no wonder that the God Realm was the most powerful of the 3,000 minor worlds. This was only a small corner. How big was Shindu? How many King Wus were there? Xiao Yang was also very shocked when he thought of this. The God Realm was just too terrifying. However, Xiao Yang didn't know that because of the things he brought back, his Northern Lights team had been strengthened once again. There were many new King Wu powerhouses. Don't be surprised. After all, in Shindu, it's very easy to reach King Wu's level. The difficulty lies in reaching King Wu's level 9. It can be said that this is the mark of a completely different identity and status in the God Realm. Yang Sun said with a bitter smile, Shindu was blessed by the heavens. It could allow countless geniuses to quickly reach King Wu's level 8. However, those who could continue to break through were only 1 in 100, or even 1 in 1,000. Therefore, the King Wu's level 8 in the God Realm were the backbone. It was very difficult for them to progress further. Therefore, many people were transferred to various parts of the God Realm to guard the peace when they were old because of King Wu's breakthrough. Of course, those who were transferred couldn't return to Shindu. It could be said that the system in Shindu was very ruthless. Everything beautiful was built on the basis that you had sufficient strength. If you wanted to stay in Shindu, of course, there was another way. That was to make great contributions. However, the God Realm had always been peaceful. Who would have the chance to make such contributions? Soon after, Yang Sun called for a carriage and went to his place of residence. In Shendu, one couldn't fly. Even running would make people feel indecent. Therefore, a carriage was the best choice. However, these horses weren't ordinary. They were horses with the bloodline of the heavenly horse. Occasionally, one could see some powerful beasts. Of course, those were all tamed. They just stood there for people to look at and amuse. The carriage ran for half an hour before it finally stopped. Xiao Yang followed Yang Sun out of the carriage. When he looked up, he saw the words Dawang Mansion. When Yang Sun saw the 3 words, the corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. He seemed to be incomparably proud. To be able to own a mansion in Shindu, this was enough to show that Yang Sun's identity was extraordinary. Brother Xiao will be staying here for these 2 years. However, you don't have to worry. Most of the elders are cultivating in seclusion. You don't have to go and greet them, Yang Sun said. Even if it was the royal family, they still needed to have strength. Otherwise, they would still be kicked out of the ranks of power. Although the God Realm followed the imperial system and contributions were important, strength was also indispensable. In fact, there were many times when strength could overpower contributions, especially in such peaceful times. Xiao Yang smiled indifferently and said, I'll be troubling you for these 2 years. Yang Sun waved his hand and said, It's all Brother Wushuang's orders. I'm also looking forward to seeing how much you'll grow in these 2 years. Chapter 1547. After entering the king's residence, Xiao Yang observed carefully and finally came to the conclusion that rich people could do whatever they wanted. Even the tiles on the ground were made of top-grade jade, and the flowers and plants in the courtyard were all high-grade spiritual herbs. In short, no matter where it was, it exuded an oppressive aura of wealth, making one feel intimidated. If one did not have any foundation, one would definitely not be able to be so extravagant. Occasionally, one could see some servants busying about in the courtyard, tending to the plants and the like. These people would greet one another and were very friendly. What made one speechless was that these handymen were at least King Wu's level. King Wu, who was regarded as incomparably precious in the upper level, might even struggle to be a handyman in God's capital. One had to admit that, in comparison, the upper level really did feel like a remote village. Of course, there was nothing to compare the two. The drifting cloud realm and the gods' realm were too far apart. After a while, Yang Sun brought Xiaoyang to a small courtyard and said, "This is Brother Wu Shuang's residence. He went to the secret zone to cultivate in seclusion during this period, so this house is empty. Before he left, he specifically told me to let you stay here." Hearing this, Xiaoyang's brows twitched slightly. He did not expect unrivaled God to be so considerate. However, this made Xiaoyang feel a little flattered. It would not be so easy to repay such a deep friendship in the future. After that, Yang Sun brought Xiaoyang around the courtyard and told him what the rooms in the courtyard were for. "Brother Xiao, you can use the things in this courtyard as you please. As for the books in the gods' realm, you can read them, but you have to rot them in your stomach," Yang Sun said very seriously. Xiaoyang nodded. The gods' realm had always been very mysterious. Naturally, they did not want their information to be leaked. This was a very normal thing. Soon after, Yang Sun brought Xiaoyang to the front of a room and said, "This is the training room. There's a spirit gathering formation inside, which will be of great help to your cultivation. Presumably, this is what Brother Xiao needs the most right now." From Yang Sun's point of view, Xiaoyang's current realm was indeed not enough, so he needed to raise his own realm as soon as possible. Moreover, Yang Sun was also very clear that Xiaoyang could rely on his own strength to cultivate to this realm in a remote village. 2 years was enough for him to break through to the next realm. Soon after, Yang Sun also explained some things and taboos before leaving. Yang Sun was also an official. He had been free recently because of unrivaled God's orders. Since this matter had been properly resolved, it was naturally time for him to perform his duties. Before leaving, Yang Sun also gave Xiaoyang a token so that he could freely enter and exit the demonarch's mansion. He could even use this privilege to go to some places in the capital. After Yang Sun left, Xiaoyang casually tossed the token on the table and went to the training room without even looking at it. The half-step King Wu rank, 8 could be said to be a knot in Xiaoyang's heart. Now that he had a great opportunity to try to break through, he naturally would not give up such an opportunity so easily. After all, it would still be quite difficult for him to emerge victorious in the grand competition of the realm of the gods at his current level. After all, King Wu rank 8 powerhouses could be seen everywhere in the god realm. There were probably many young talents of rank 9 too. Although he had the explosive pill, Xiaoyang felt a little strained after his battle with Yang Sun. If he participated in the tournament at his current realm, he was afraid that it would be extremely difficult for him. To be safe, he naturally had to give it a try to see if he could win in one fell swoop. Moreover, he wanted to obtain the opportunity to enter the tomb of the god of sin. As for the quota to enter the tomb of the god of sin, it was limited to begin with. Moreover, with the current state of the god realm, it was likely that they had invited all the geniuses in this world. At that time, it would be really difficult and full of obstacles. After entering the training room, Xiaoyang also felt the density of the spiritual energy in the room. It was as if he could grab it casually. If the spiritual energy could be materialized, the room would be filled up and the density would be terrifyingly high. It had to be said that now Xiaoyang was really envious of these people in the god realm. Such top-notch resources were hard to come by. Immediately, Xiao Yang calmed his heart and entered into a state of cultivation, madly absorbing the spiritual energy. Time passed month after month, until half a year later, Xiao Yang also gradually felt that the spiritual energy in his body was almost unable to contain it. Only then did he stop cultivating. Now, Xiao Yang felt that he was within reach of King Wu rank 8. He was only a thin layer away, but he was still unable to break through. This made Xiao Yang feel very uncomfortable in his heart. He knew that he was lacking a little bit of enlightenment. Even if he continued to cultivate, without that little bit of enlightenment, it would be difficult for him to enter the next realm. Immediately, Xiao Yang also decisively abandoned his original idea and began to relax himself. Since his realm was not enough, he also began to cultivate his body. With the help of the silent thunder pearl and such pure spiritual energy, it was naturally twice the result with half the effort. Occasionally, Xiao Yang would also read some books, hoping to get some inspiration from the books in the God realm, allowing him to break through the thin layer of window paper. However, how could this be something that could be done so easily? Sometimes it was just a flash of inspiration. If he could grasp it, he would be able to soar up. However, Xiao Yang did not grasp it. Such an opportunity simply did not appear at all, which made him feel incomparably melancholic. Regarding this, Xiao Yang was not discouraged at all. He was very clear that the more he reached this stage, the more he had to stabilize his state of mind. There could not be the slightest mistake. If there was a problem with his state of mind, then the path of cultivation would naturally deviate to a certain extent. At that time, he was afraid that he would completely deviate and it would be difficult for him to move forward. Spring came and autumn came, summer came and winter came. A year's time passed leisurely. Of course, in Fairy's capital there were no 4 seasons. It was as warm as spring. In this year's time, Yang Sen did not come back even once. Xiao Yang felt a little bored by himself and wanted to go out for a walk. However, on second thought, there was not much time left before the feast and the God Realm tournament began. Now was not the time to leave. Another few months passed, and Xiao Yang broke through. Chapter 1548. Xiao Yang slowly exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. Looking at the power of lightning emitted from his body, the corner of his mouth revealed a helpless smile. This time, although he was unable to break through to King Wu's rank 8 in terms of realm, his physical body had broken through to such a level of strength. In other words, even if Xiao Yang did not take the power-up elixir, just the strength of his physical body was enough to fight against an ordinary King Wu's rank 8. Of course, it was hard to say when facing the 6 of the 3, 6, and 9 ranks. If he relied on the effect of the power-up elixir, he had the confidence to fight against the top geniuses. Perhaps at the beginning as a warrior, he could rely on his rich battle experience and some skills to surpass a few levels to challenge and succeed. However, the higher the realm, the more likely it was that he would not be able to fight against someone of the same realm. Although King Wu's realm did not have such a big gap, between King Wu's rank 7 and rank 8, the gap between one realm could be said to be very big. Previously, Xiao Yang relied entirely on the power-up elixir to fight against King Wu's rank 8. But now that his physical body had reached rank 8, he could fight head-on without the power-up elixir. Dong dong! The door of the cultivation room was violently banged on. Hearing the sound, Xiao Yang could not help but frown slightly. Who was it that was so fierce? Coming. Xiao Yang was a little angry, but he did not explode. Instead, he quickly went to open the door. After opening the door, a young lady entered his sight. This young lady was dressed in purple and looked very eye-catching. Her hands were behind her back and her body was leaning forward. She deliberately widened her big eyes, which became even bigger. The young lady looked for a while and then began to shake her head. Her hair swayed along with it. It was very interesting. Xiao Yang was a little unhappy to be sized up like this. Why was he considered a rare species after coming to the realm of the gods? Everyone was itching to observe him carefully. "Little girl, didn't your parents tell you that this is a very rude action?" Xiaoyang also purposely darkened his face as he said. However, the little girl did not seem to feel the threat of Xiaoyang's aura. Instead, she blinked her large eyes, put her hands on her hips, and shook her head. "I am being rude. What can you do about it?" These words made Xiaoyang speechless. Putting aside the fact that he was currently in the god realm, how could he be so calculative with this seemingly inexperienced and naive little girl? Besides, this is my home. Let's not talk about this anymore. This lady is King Wu, a powerhouse of the 8th step. Are you a match for me? As the little girl spoke, she raised her fist and bared her teeth, trying to put on a ferocious look. However, when he revealed his canine teeth, he gave off an innocent and adorable feeling. Even his threatening words sounded like a child's playful banter. When Xiaoyang heard this, he was instantly amused. However, as he laughed, his smile froze. This little girl was actually a King Wu existence of the 8th step. This caused Xiaoyang's self-confidence to take a hit. It was a little hard to understand. The realm of the gods was really a place where King Wu existences of the 8th step could be found everywhere. Even this little girl was like that. It seemed that it was definitely not an easy thing to walk around here. Instantly, Xiaoyang's head was filled with black lines. It was hard to understand this mysterious place. At the same time, Xiaoyang also received another piece of information. That was, this little girl was from the palace. Most likely, her relationship with Yang Sen was not shallow. Now you know how powerful I am. Let me tell you, don't provoke me easily. The little girl said pretentiously. Xiaoyang also nodded repeatedly, indicating that he understood. The little girl scrutinized for a while and said, "Why are you so stupid? You stayed in Brother Wushuang's cultivation room for a year, and you're still a King Wu 8th step?" If this was said by others, it would be a joke. However, this little girl had such confidence because she herself was a King Wu 8th step existence. She could ridicule him like this. "How old are you?" Xiaoyang also asked with a smile on his face. The little girl directly ignored Xiaoyang's words and said, "I heard Brother Wushuang speak highly of you. Brother Yang Sen also said that you're powerful. However, in my opinion, your talent is only SOSO. When I went from King Wu 7th step to King Wu 8th step, I only went into seclusion for a year." When these words came out, the corner of Xiaoyang's mouth could not help but twitch. This was a little too exaggerated. According to this speed, she might really be a little girl. After all, the realm of the gods was blessed by nature, and this was the fairies' capital. This little girl would probably be at the level of a martial master when she started cultivating. She only took a year to go from rank 7 to rank 8. Her previous cultivation time could also be roughly estimated. "You're extremely talented. I'm just an ordinary person. How can I compare to you?" Xiaoyang said with a bitter smile. When the little girl heard this, she was instantly satisfied. She reached out to pat Xiaoyang's shoulder, but realized that she was shorter than him. She did not care and tiptoed to pat him. Xiaoyang did not know whether to laugh or cry. This little girl was really interesting. Since Brother Wushuang said that you're not bad, then I'll reluctantly take you in as my little brother. When the time comes, if anyone dares to bully you, just mention my name. The little girl pretended to be old and experienced and said. Xiaoyang immediately bowed and nodded, saying, "Thank you, big sister, for taking pity on me." After this round of flattery, the little girl could be said to be satisfied. She even felt that she was floating and could not extricate herself. Suddenly, the little girl seemed to have thought of something, and her expression changed abruptly. "Speak. Did you use such flowery words to trick my brother Wushuang into giving you a spot in the realm of the gods tournament?" The little girl put her hands on her hips, and a sudden surge of anger rose. The little girl's aura suddenly became much sharper. Immediately, Xiaoyang also felt a huge amount of pressure. At first, he thought that the little girl was just bluffing. However, the aura he felt now was indeed that of King Wu's rank 8. For such a little girl to have such a realistic level, it felt very surreal. Previously, he was only teasing this little girl. He did not expect that she was really powerful and not boasting. However, there was another piece of news that shocked Xiaoyang to the core. The spot in the realm of the gods tournament was given to him by unrivaled God. What was going on here? Xiaoyang's heart was filled with doubts. How could this be? The little girl's aura was still rising and her anger was soaring. Chapter 1549. You're saying that unrivaled God gave me the right to participate in the God Realm tournament? Xiaoyang asked in disbelief. If that was the case, then the God Realm tournament meant something different to him. Moreover, the favor that unrivaled God had given him was too precious. Xiaoyang was very clear about what the great competition of the realm of the gods entailed. The little girl frowned slightly when she saw that Xiaoyang did not seem to know about this. She hesitated for a moment before saying, "That's true. The God Realm tournament will only invite a few powerful worlds. Your drifting cloud world doesn't have that right." Xiaoyang was completely shocked when he heard that. At the same time, he was extremely touched. He had only met unrivaled God a few times. He did not expect that unrivaled God would give up the God Realm tournament for him. How could that be? Does that mean that unrivaled God has no way of entering the tomb of the God of Sin? This was the first outcome that came to Xiaoyang's mind. He was instantly filled with despair. The little girl waved her hand helplessly and said, "That's true. You could say that we in the God realm see entering the tomb of the God of Sin as an opportunity to enter King Wu rank 9. At that moment, Xiaoyang's heart was filled with despair. If that was the case, then he owed unrivaled God a lot. At the same time, Xiaoyang had acknowledged unrivaled God as his friend. They were only acquaintances, but unrivaled God had made such a huge sacrifice for him. However, what was unrivaled God's purpose in doing so? No matter how he thought about it, he could not come up with a reasonable explanation. Of course, as royalty in the God realm, we naturally have special privileges, even if the main bloodline has already distributed all the privileges, as long as Brother Unrivaled can break through to King Wu rank 9. He'll also be qualified to enter the tomb of the God of Sin, the little girl said. Hearing this, Xiaoyang suddenly remembered that it was Yang Sun who was welcoming him, not unrivaled God. He was probably in closed-door cultivation to enter the tomb of the God of Sin. From this, he could conclude that unrivaled God was not without any thoughts of entering the tomb of the God of Sin. However, if he didn't give up a spot, then Xiaoyang wouldn't have a chance. The more he thought about it, the heavier the burden in Xiaoyang's heart became. Don't worry, Brother Wushuang is very talented. He will definitely break through to the 9th stage of King Wu. When the young lady saw that Xiaoyang was blaming himself, she couldn't bear it. She patted his shoulder and comforted him. However, how could Xiaoyang feel any better with this kind of consolation? It would be fine if unrivaled God could break through and enter the tomb of the God of Sin safely. However, if he could not, he would have to carry this guilt forever. Even Xiaoyang found it hard to resist this kind of deep friendship. In the next moment, Xiaoyang also made up his mind. No matter what, he had to repay this friendship. Since his friend had done her best to help him, he naturally couldn't be a heartless person. Looking at the outsider in front of her, the little girl shook her head helplessly and said, "The only thing you can do now is to win in the grand competition of the realm of the gods and display your formidable strength so that you can live up to Brother Wushuang's words. Maybe when the time comes, the uncles and grandpas will think that Brother Wushuang made the right choice and make an exception to let him enter the tomb of the God of Sin." Xiaoyang could only laugh bitterly. He didn't know if the young lady was telling the truth or trying to comfort him. After all, the rules of the God realm were relatively strict. There must be a corresponding price to pay for any choice made. Of course, The royal family had some privileges, but that was just a word from the higher-ups. Of course, no one knew what would happen exactly. By the way, my name is Ziying. If anyone bullies you, just tell them my name. The young lady said and turned to leave. Now, Ziying's heart was filled with sadness. She knew how difficult this matter was. Therefore, after Shen Wushuang went into closed-door cultivation, she went into closed-door cultivation as well. She wanted to try to break through to King Wu rank 9 and give her place to her brother. However, there wasn't much time left for the God Realm tournament. She also felt that she was very far away from King Wu rank 9. Therefore, she came out of closed-door cultivation and wanted to see the person her brother had mentioned. However, the result didn't seem to be as good as she had imagined. However, this outsider was also very worried about her brother. It was useless to say anything now. Therefore, she could only let nature take its course. After watching the little girl walk away, Xiao Yang leaned against the door frame with his eyebrows tightly knitted together. For a moment he had mixed feelings. He didn't expect this one-sided acquaintance to be such a great help to him. Perhaps this was what a friendship between gentlemen was like. Although they had never experienced anything together, they had already treated each other as friends who had gone through life and death just by meeting a few times. Good job, Shen Wushuang. Good job. Xiao Yang mumbled to himself. The regret on his face gradually faded and he became happy. How lucky was it to have such a close friend in life? Immediately, Xiao Yang returned to the cultivation room to continue his closed-door cultivation. Xiao Yang, who had been a little confused at first, strengthened his resolve when he found out about Shen Wushuang's choice. It could be said that the God Realm tournament this time wasn't just for his own benefit or to enter the tomb of the God of Sin. Instead, he wanted to prove to the God Realm that Shen Wushuang's judgment was right. He couldn't let him become a laughingstock in the God Realm. Most people in the God Realm were arrogant and looked down on outsiders. However, Shen Wushuang's family didn't seem to have such a tradition. Perhaps they were the most clear-headed. Although the God Realm was powerful, it didn't mean that there were no more powerful people in other places. Time passed slowly, and Princess Mingzhu's banquet was approaching. God's capital became lively again. Countless young talents from the God Realm and top geniuses from other worlds poured into God's capital. Many people were talking about Princess Mingzhu's banquet this time. Those who didn't have an invitation were guessing who would win the princess's favor and soar to the top. As for those who had an invitation, many of them were full of confidence. They felt that this time they would definitely be able to win the heart of the beauty. Although Princess Mingzhu had never shown herself, according to rumors, she was a peerless beauty. However, many people had never seen what Princess Mingzhu looked like. These rumors came from the royal family because they were the only ones who had the chance to see Princess Mingzhu. Many people loved Princess Mingzhu passionately. Of course, there were also people who wanted to be the prince consort of the God Realm. Of course, if they could have both the beauty and the fame, why not? Chapter 1550. After Princess Mingzhu's feast, it would be the great competition of the realm of gods. It could be said that the collision of these two events caused the entire realm of gods to boil. For a time, many thoughts and speculations appeared at the same time, causing many people to look forward to it. Of course, in the feast who would be valued. This was also something that everyone looked forward to. Of course, many people could only look at the ocean and sigh. The goddess in their hearts was still out of reach, and might even be taken away by others. However, no matter how lively it was outside, Xiao Yang knew nothing about it. The most important thing to him now was to break through his realm. Even when the feast was approaching, Xiao Yang still didn't know. Of course, he didn't have the mood to participate in the feast. As for Princess Mingzhu, he didn't take it to heart at first. Not long after, Xiao Yang's door was knocked again. However, this time it wasn't as rude. Instead, it was much gentler. Xiao Yang immediately stopped cultivating. When he opened the door, he saw Yang Sun, who had changed out of his silver armor and was wearing a luxurious robe. It had to be said that Yang Sun, who wasn't wearing his silver armor, was less sharp. His expressionless face gave off a feeling of gentleness. "Why are you here?" Xiao Yang asked doubtfully, when he felt that Xiao Yang's aura had become much stronger than before, but he didn't break through his realm. Yang Sun couldn't help but frown. "The feast is starting tonight, and you don't care at all. Why aren't you washing up and dressing up?" Yang Sun urged anxiously. It could be said that many people dressed themselves up for Princess Mingzhu's feast, hoping to leave a good impression or even be valued. However, Xiao Yang acted as if he didn't know what was going on. This made people feel a little anxious. Xiao Yang shook his head indifferently and said, "What does that have to do with me?" When those words came out, Yang Sun was so angry that he almost vomited blood. Many people saw tonight as a great opportunity to rise up. They couldn't wait to stick to it, but they didn't have the ability. If he could become the son-in-law of the Divine Realm's royal family, the change in his status would not be ordinary. When he saw Yang Sun's shocked expression, Xiao Yang shook his head and said, "Don't tell me that you still expect me to rely on my looks to climb up the ranks. Besides, although I'm pretty good-looking, I can't say that I'm the best in the world." These words made Yang Sun sweat profusely in his heart. This Xiao Yang's way of thinking was really different. Could it be that he knew his own limits, which was why he had such an attitude? Big Brother said that fate is something that can't be described with words. If you dress up a little, maybe the tortoise will fall in love with the mung bean. Yang Sun also said somewhat angrily. Of course, Yang Sun was also angry in his heart. He naturally knew how beautiful Princess Mingzhu was, but Xiao Yang's careless appearance made him feel very uncomfortable. Xiao Yang shrugged and said, "No matter who's the tortoise and who's the mung bean, from what you said, there's still room for discussion." At this moment, Xiao Yang was not nervous at all. Instead, he began to tease Yang Sun, looking like a scoundrel. Yang Sun was indeed very angry right now. Xiao Yang, this guy, was really stubborn. Of course, he also knew one thing in his heart, which was that Xiao Yang's determination to win Princess Mingzhu's heart was probably made up by unrivaled God. If Xiao Yang really had such an attitude, he would have been impatient by now. How could he act as if it had nothing to do with him now? Now, Yang Sun was looking forward to this guy who looked about the same age as him. He didn't know what exactly he was thinking, but it was worth waiting to see. At the very least, this kind of temperament seemed to have surpassed many people. He was neither pleased by external gains nor saddened by personal gains. Let's just laugh about this for today. Don't say such nonsense outside in the future. Otherwise, both of us will have a hard time, Yang Sun said softly. Yang Sun's analogy just now was only because he was anxious that he said it. Fortunately, there was no such thing as the walls having ears in the king's residence, so he just laughed it off. Xiao Yang only smiled slightly. Naturally, he knew how serious this matter was. However, no matter what, since you possess an invitation, you are bound to participate in the banquet. As Yang Sun spoke, his tone was no longer teasing. Instead, it became a lot more serious. In Yang Sun's opinion, this was essential. After all, the guest list had already been submitted. If Xiao Yang didn't go, it would seem like he wasn't giving them any face. If that happened, some old-fashioned people in the God realm would think that Xiao Yang was arrogant and rude, and it would be difficult for him to move around in the future. "Can I refuse?" Xiao Yang asked hesitantly. Yang Sun shook his head, helplessly. He did not know if Xiao Yang was really not interested, or if he felt that there was no hope for him to be chosen. That was why he was so disappointed and pretending to be calm. No. Yang Sun answered very decisively, cutting off Xiao Yang's thoughts. Even Yang Sun's expression became much more serious because of this. He looked like he could not refuse. Xiao Yang shrugged helplessly and said, "If that's the case, then I'll go and take a look. It'll be considered as broadening my horizons." However, After Yang Sun received the answer, his expression did not become better. Instead, it became much more serious. At this time, he also remembered unrivaled God's instructions. Xiaoyang was an unruly person who did as he pleased, so he had to keep an eye on him. If he caused any trouble in the God realm, it might really cause a huge chain reaction. Although there were many almighties in the God realm, sometimes the chain reaction caused by an incident was also very high. At this moment, Xiaoyang was very curious. What did Princess Mingzhu look like to make the people in the God realm so crazy about her? As for whether it was the attraction of beauty or the change in status, he would only be able to come to a reasonable conclusion after meeting Princess Mingzhu. Aren't you going to dress up? Yang Sun asked hesitantly. Xiaoyang shook his head indifferently and said, I'm not a girl. What's there to dress up for? As for dressing up, that was even more unnecessary. After all, at their level, it was too easy to be spotless. It could be said that there was a faint layer of spiritual power on the surface of their bodies at all times, blocking the dust. Chapter 1551. Yang Sun felt very helpless toward Xiaoyang, who insisted on not dressing up and tidying himself up to face the banquet tonight. Then again, those who could attend Princess Mingzhu's banquet were all young talents from all over the world. Which one of them was not a top genius? Moreover, Yang Sun had heard that there was no lack of handsome men among them. Now, it seemed that Xiaoyang's looks could not compare to the best few. In terms of cultivation base, he was only half a step away from King Wu, rank 8. He could even be said to be of the lowest level. Thinking about it this way, it did seem to be the case. There was not much of a chance. However, since they were already here, and unrivaled God had specifically instructed Yang Sun to bring Xiaoyang to the banquet, even if it meant that they had to tie him up. As the younger brother, Yang Sun had no choice but to obey his elder brother's orders. How would he dare to disobey? Fortunately, Xiaoyang was not an overly stubborn person. Since he had agreed, it was better to avoid unnecessary trouble. It would not be a bad idea to let him see the world. Soon after, Yang Sun brought Xiaoyang out of the king's residence. They boarded a carriage and moved forward leisurely. Although it was only afternoon and there were still a few hours before the banquet began, they had to set off early because they could not fly and had to pay attention to their etiquette. Moreover, the king's residence was quite far away from the palace. There was not the slightest bump in the carriage. It could even be said that it was terrifyingly steady. Xiaoyang was like an old monk in meditation. He did not show any emotion at all. On this special day in the God realm, Xiaoyang did not show any emotion at all. He felt that it was nothing special. Of course, the reason for this was very simple. He had never thought of climbing up to Princess Mingzhu, so he was very relieved in his heart. He did not have much expectation, so naturally, there was no so-called joy or disappointment. He could control his emotions very well. The wind was light and the clouds were calm. It was nothing more than that. On the other hand, Yang Sun was even more confused when he saw Xiaoyang's calmness. He really did not understand why this guy was so confident. Even if he knew his own limits, he still needed to have some anticipation. However, this guy did not show any such emotion at all. Brother Xiao, I heard that many people see you as their number one enemy this time. Yang Sun began to speak, intentionally or otherwise. Now, Yang Sun did not believe that he could not make this guy's emotions stir. He did not want to know what Princess Mingzhu looked like. Xiaoyang was still in a meditative state, and he still seemed to be unconcerned about this. Yang Sun seemed to have accepted Xiaoyang's current state. He continued, Princess Mingzhu is the pearl of the God realm, revered by millions of people. You saying that you must have her. So many people think you're too arrogant. You. Oh. After a long time, Xiaoyang also responded indifferently. He still did not have the slightest bit of emotion. It was not that Xiaoyang did not have the slightest bit of expectation in his heart. It was just that he kept it in his heart and did not show it. Moreover, no matter how much he looked forward to it, as long as he could see it in the end, he would be relieved. Most of the time, it was just him worrying about nothing. Xiaoyang only wanted to become stronger. Therefore, he had completely put down these unnecessary distracting thoughts. Sometimes, when there were too many distracting thoughts and thinking too much, it was not necessarily a good thing to take it seriously. When there were more troubles, there would be more obstacles to cultivation. Many people improved by leaps and bounds in their cultivation when they were young. However, once they were in power or a director, their cultivation would inevitably stagnate and it would be difficult to advance. That was because there were too many things to take care of. A lot of thoughts were divided, and they were unable to fully immerse themselves in cultivation. Therefore, they neglected their cultivation. Xiaoyang also understood this very clearly. Moreover, he did not want to become such a person. Therefore, most of the time he also maintained a very normal state of mind. After Yang Sun received such an answer, he was so angry that smoke was about to come out of his 7 orifices. He was really speechless. I heard that the girl Ziying looked for you. She didn't make things difficult for you, right? After a long time, Yang Sun opened his mouth again and said. At this time, Xiaoyang was no longer in the same state as before. Thinking of the girl, the corner of his mouth revealed a smile. Although the girl had threatened him, it was just a simple outburst of emotions. There was no malicious intent at all. Nowadays, there were not many people who had no malicious intent. She said that she would be my big sister and would protect me in the realm of gods, Xiaoyang said with a smile. When he saw that Xiaoyang's emotional fluctuation was actually because of a girl, he sighed helplessly. I have a pure heart and do not have any malicious intent. However, I have some criticisms towards Big Brother's decision. If my words have offended you, please forgive me, Yang Sun said softly. Xiaoyang looked at Yang Sun and shook his head. He said, Can you guarantee that you don't hate me in your heart? As soon as he said that, Yang Sun's eyebrows immediately knitted together. At this moment, Xiaoyang's question really made him a little absent-minded. Because of this outsider, his big brother had given his quota to him. There was even a very high possibility that he would lose the opportunity to enter the tomb of the God of Gods. How could Yang Sun not have any ripples in his heart? However, his big brother, whom he had always respected, had asked him to do this. He was to receive Xiaoyang and prevent this outsider from touching the taboo of the realm of gods. After a long time, Yang Sun also exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. He said, That will depend on whether Big Brother can make a breakthrough. From Yang Sun's point of view, his big brother's way of doing things was very clear. That was to give it his all and force him to see if he could enter rank 9 without relying on the tomb of the God of Gods. At that time, if the opportunity was suitable, it was very possible for him to take another step forward. It could be said that this way of thinking was very perfect. However, if there was any mistake, it would probably become a flaw in the end. And such a flaw would probably cause all of the anger of the demander to pour out on Xiaoyang. Fortunately, the elders in his family were all in seclusion and were still unaware of this matter. Otherwise, it would probably be an extremely difficult thing for Xiaoyang to enter the realm of gods. Second young master, we've arrived at the palace. At this moment, a servant outside the carriage reported. Chapter 1552. Brother Xiao, once we reach the palace, we can only walk. Let's go. Yang Sun smiled and said. Xiaoyang nodded. He was very clear about these rules, so he didn't care much about it. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. If there were such rules in other people's territory, then it was necessary to abide by them. After getting off the carriage, Xiaoyang saw 2 rows of guards in silver armor. Each of them was holding a long spear and looked extraordinarily mighty. Of course, with a slight sense of their cultivation, they were naturally King Wu rank 8 experts. If it was at the beginning, Xiaoyang would be very shocked. However, he had been in the realm of the gods for more than 2 years and was already used to it. Even that little girl, Ziying, was King Wu rank 8. What else could be said? In other places, King Wu rank 8 experts were simply the pinnacle of existence. However, in this place, they could be found everywhere. Of course, there was one thing that Xiaoyang wasn't very clear about. There were indeed many rank 8 King Wu rank 8 experts in the realm of the gods, and they were the backbone of the forces. However, they weren't everywhere. It could be said that Shen Du had gathered all the geniuses in the realm of the gods. Therefore, it gave people the feeling that they were everywhere. It could be said that those people with high positions outside all came from Shendu. However, those who came out were old and had no hope of breaking through. Therefore, they went to guard various places. This had become the norm in Shendu. However, it wasn't easy to create King Wu rank 8 experts. Similarly, it took a lot of resources and effort. It could be said that the entire realm of the gods was supporting Shendu. Then, Shendu would feed back those geniuses who broke through to the realm of the gods from King Wu rank 8. Yang Sun didn't say much and directly took out his identity token. With the previous experience, Xiaoyang also displayed the phantom of the airship. This was his invitation letter. The leading silver-armored guard nodded slightly. After Yang Sun instructed his subordinates to wait for him here, he led Xiaoyang into the palace. After entering the palace and seeing the buildings, Xiaoyang felt that it was hard to describe the prosperity of this place. With every step he took, he felt like he was stepping on countless great resources, and his heart ached. One had to admit that the imperial palace in the divine capital was extremely luxurious. It was unimaginable. Luckily, Xiaoyang had seen a lot of things in his previous life. His comment on this was that it was extremely extravagant, but not extremely luxurious. The reason why it was said to be extravagant was because the imperial palace had some pursuits in this aspect. It was not a natural display of extravagance. This invitation letter is only valid if you enter. In the future, if Brother Xiao does not receive a summons from the divine palace, please do not enter so easily. Once discovered, it will be a capital offense. At this moment, Yang Sun also leisurely said, "Today was a special day, the day of Princess Mingzhu's feast. Therefore, this invitation letter allowed them to enter the imperial palace. However, the only place they could go was the fairy pool. If they accidentally trespassed into other places, they might not be sentenced to death, but the punishment would not be light." After listening to Yang Sun's introduction, Xiaoyang also nodded slightly. This time, it seemed that he had no choice but to come to the imperial palace. However, he did not have such high expectations. It was hard to say if he would still come to this place next time. In the imperial palace in the divine capital, there was not much noise. Instead, it was very quiet. Even as they walked in and out, they only saw a few people. Although they could not see many people inside, it was definitely not an easy task to sneak into the imperial palace. Not to mention how many level 8 King Wu existences were outside. There were probably even more powerful existences inside. Trying to sneak in under their watchful eyes was simply like showing off one slight skill before an expert. At this moment, Yang Sun also began to talk about the things to pay attention to at the feast this time, as well as the taboo places that they should not go. The fairy pool feast was a feast for Princess Mingzhu to choose her husband. There were a total of 100 invitations, and many people would come. It was hard to confirm if they had only met once, so it was also a 3-day event. Of course, the highlight of the feast this time was to see who could win Princess Mingzhu's favor. However, there was only one person. However, those who could attend this feast were all extraordinary people. They were top geniuses from various worlds. It was also a great way to get to know each other and make friends. Xiaoyang still did not care about this. After all, it was easy to make friends with benefits. However, it was not so easy to make friends with people who could go through hardships together. Since Unrivaled God wanted him to try his luck at the fairy pool feast, Xiaoyang naturally would not refuse. He also wanted to see how big the gap was between himself and these top geniuses. At least he would know in his heart. Along the way, Xiaoyang discovered that even the maidservants with the lowest cultivation base in the palace were at King Wu's level. Xiaoyang was truly speechless. His Northern Lights team had only managed to raise their core strength to King Wu's level after years of hard work. However, who would have thought that they could only be maidservants in the divine capital's palace? Xiaoyang found it hard to accept such a difference. This was the injustice of the heavenly Tao. In a blessed land, a person with average talent could improve his cultivation base by leaps and bounds. In a barren land, a talented person's cultivation speed was extremely slow. In comparison, it was easy to imagine the gap between the two. At the same time, Xiaoyang was also feeling the spiritual energy flowing in the palace. The spirit qi in this place was also denser than outside. Xiaoyang's mind was constantly pondering what had caused such a situation to occur. "Xiaoyang, I knew you'd come." At this moment, a very excited voice was heard. Immediately, Xiaoyang was startled by the voice. He looked up and saw a man dressed in white. He had sharp eyebrows and bright eyes, and he looked very sharp. "Noise is prohibited in the palace." Yang Sin immediately gestured for silence when he saw the change in the mood of the people around him. Seeing this, the man in white shrugged helplessly. "Bai Jian, long time no see." Xiaoyang walked over and greeted him. This man in white was Bai Jian, who had gone through life and death with Xiaoyang in the Thousand Thunder realm back then. Who would have thought that after being separated for so many years and not having any contact with each other, they would bump into each other in this place? What a coincidence! Chapter 1553. After approaching Bai Jian, Xiaoyang could keenly sense that Bai Jian's aura had become sharper than before. Even though Bai Jian did not do anything, he gave off a feeling that his sharpness was on full display, as if there was a blade at one's back. Suddenly, Xiaoyang seemed to have thought of something. Bai Jian's aura had become so powerful and was leaking out uncontrollably. This characteristic made people think of another possibility. "In these few years, your cultivation has broken through?" Xiaoyang asked in surprise. Bai Jian also laughed heartily and said, "After experiencing the Thousand Thunder realm, my sword heart became more clear. After cultivating for a period of time, I broke through." Bai Jian was now King Wu level 9. It could be said that level 9 was almost the peak of the 3,000 small worlds. Xiaoyang could not help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. Bai Jian's cultivation speed was really terrifying. More importantly, he was still very young. It was even very possible for him to take the first step into level 9. Right now, Xiaoyang was extremely shocked as well. The current Bai Jian could only be described as having a limitless future. You, on the other hand, have obtained the Dark Thunder fruit. Why are you still at the same place after so many years? Bai Jian asked with some doubt. In Bai Jian's opinion, since Xiaoyang could kill Lei Dingyin and then kill Tian Bianu, there was no need to doubt his cultivation and talent. However, after so many years, his cultivation was still at the same level. This was truly puzzling to others. Xiaoyang also helplessly smiled bitterly and said, "It's a long story. Later on, I encountered some things. I was not as lucky as you. My cultivation even regressed once." If it were not for the heavy injuries to his body from the fierce battle during the calamity of Black Fire, Xiaoyang would have entered Kingwu level 8 long ago. However, he did not regret the calamity of Black Fire. Hearing this, Bai Jian's expression froze slightly. The regression of one's cultivation level could be said to be a taboo for cultivators. It was hard to imagine what kind of bitter battle or encounter Xiaoyang had to go through to end up like this. Yang Sun's expression also changed slightly. In this way, there was a reason why Xiaoyang was unable to break through to the 8th level of Kingwu. Once a cultivator's realm regressed, it would be extremely difficult for them to break through their realm again. Currently, Yang Sun's mood had also become a little gloomy. "Why didn't you inform me when you encountered such a big matter?" Bai Jian said with some regret. Xiaoyang shook his head indifferently and said, "The situation is critical. If I had informed you, I would have turned into ashes by the time you arrived." These words left Bai Jian speechless. The world was so big that even if Bai Jian could sense it, it would be difficult for him to rush over. Moreover, after the matter of the Thousand Thunder realm came to an end, he went into closed-door cultivation. This is... Bai Jian looked at Yang Sun and asked curiously. Yang Sun cupped his hand slightly and said, "Xin Yang Sun." Bai Jian looked at Yang Sun and his eyebrows twitched slightly. He continued to look at Xiaoyang and thought of Shen Wushuang. Then he thought of some rumors. Suddenly, Bai Jian laughed and patted Xiaoyang's back and said, "Brother, I have high hopes for you. When the time comes, if anyone dares to criticize you and Princess Mingzhu, I'll pull out their tongues." Hearing Bai Jian's words, Xiaoyang's face was filled with black lines. This was really touching a sore spot. On the other hand, Yang Sun's opinion of Xiaoyang had changed. Naturally, he knew that Bai Jian was the #1 genius of the Sky Sword realm. Now that he had broken through to the 9th level of Kingwu, it was rumored that he had a chance to break through to that level. Even when the Emperor God mentioned Bai Jian back then, he had some praise. Now that Bai Jian had broken through to the 9th level of Kingwu, his reputation had also soared. Even many aristocrats in the God realm had extended an olive branch, wanting to rope Bai Jian in. "Aren't you here today? Don't tell me you're not interested?" Xiaoyang teased. Bai Jian waved his hand nonchalantly and said, "I didn't want to come at first, but those old guys in my family made a few invitations and insisted that I attend. Even if I can't get the princess's favor, at least I can get to know more geniuses from various worlds." As he said that, Bai Jian shrugged helplessly. He was not very good at these things. However, the elders in his family had given him a strict order, so Bai Jian had no choice but to come. It could be said that Bai Jian was wholeheartedly focused on cultivation. As for some things, he did not want to take care of them at all. As for making friends, it was even easier for Bai Jian. If they could get along well, then they would be friends. Xiaoyang also smiled knowingly. Their thoughts were still somewhat similar. The two of them were forcefully pushed to this place by the power behind them. In fact, they even felt some sympathy for each other in this matter. The corner of Yang Sun's mouth could not help but twitch. These two fellows were really like-minded in this aspect. Of course, Yang Sun did not know about the life and death friendship of the Thousand Thunder realm. As the three of them talked, they also continued to move forward. The sky gradually darkened, but the palace was also as bright as day. However, there was not the slightest bit of candlelight. Everything was illuminated by luminous pearls. Looking at those huge luminous pearls, Bai Jian also shook his head and complained that it was intolerable. As a person from the God realm, Yang Sun had two people from the outside world beside him who did not have much respect for the God realm. Some of their comments even made him a little speechless. He had to say that it was somewhat torturous. It was not known if Yang Sun was also affected by these two people. Looking at those luminous pearls, he also felt that it was somewhat tacky. "Brother, I heard that all the things in this banquet were cooked with rare heavenly treasures. The spiritual energy contained in them is very rich and is a great tonic. Since we do not have any extravagant hopes for Princess Mingzhu, then we do not have to worry about our image. How about eating and drinking to our heart's content?" As Bai Jian spoke, he hesitated for a moment, thinking that there was a royal relative of the God realm beside him. He immediately changed his words. Yang Sun, who was at the side, was also very helpless. How did he meet these two people? However, Yang Sun also realized that the two of them were somewhat similar in character to his elder brother. Perhaps it was because of this that they appreciated each other. After walking for a while, they arrived at the place where the banquet was held, the Jade Pool. Due to his identity as a royal relative, Yang Sun also entered the Jade Pool. Of course, his main purpose was to watch over Xiaoyang. Chapter 1554. The Jade Pool was huge, and it was shrouded in mist like a fairyland. There was a huge pool in the middle, and it was filled with fine wine. The fragrance of the wine assailed their nostrils. Before they even drank it, they already felt refreshed and intoxicated. There were also many small tables and cushions on both sides of the hall. Those were the places where the guests sat. Xiao Yang and Bai Jian casually found a corner where it was not easy for others to look over, and sat down ready to feast. Just as Bai Jian said, they did not have much interest in Princess Mingzhu, so they came to eat and drink. There was no harm in letting loose a little. At this moment, many people had already arrived, but very few people were seated. Some were in groups of 3 or 5, and they were discussing. The maidservants stood at the side in an orderly manner. If there was a lack of food, they would add it immediately. They wouldn't let the guests go without meat and wine. Bai Jian and Xiao Yang were the 2 people that the maids hated the most. The moment they came up, they began to eat and drink like crazy. In just a short while, the food on the table was swept clean. After a few times, even the maids were stunned. Not only the maids, but even Yang Sin's expression became much uglier. These 2 couldn't have been reincarnated from starvation, right? They had never eaten delicious food before, and now they were doing this? However, Yang Sin was very clear that Xiao Yang drank 3 pots of divine wine in a row, but he did not show any signs of drunkenness. This kind of alcohol tolerance was really surprising. In fact, Yang Sin was very clear in his heart that King Wu was at the 7th tier, and drinking 3 pots of divine wine was almost the limit. He would have to be drunk for at least a month before he could wake up. However, Xiao Yang's realm was real, and he did not get drunk. This could only be explained by his alcohol tolerance. Brother Xiao has a good alcohol tolerance. Bai Jian could not help but praise. Xiao Yang waved his hand indifferently, raised his wine cup, and said, "Let's drink again." Forget it, forget it. Eat more and drink less. After all, the main character hasn't even appeared yet, and we're already drunk. That wouldn't be good. Bai Jian also waved his hand and didn't dare to continue drinking. Even though Bai Jian was a 9th level martial king, after drinking so much of the divine wine, he could feel a mellow effect of the wine starting to take effect. If he continued drinking, he might really get drunk. His current state was just right, slightly tipsy and pleasurable. Xiao Yang gulped down the wine in his cup and began to eat the delicacies in front of him. During this hour, many cultivators arrived one after another. Obviously, these were all young geniuses with invitations or some relatives of the royal family. They came to join in the fun and see if there were any outsiders worth nurturing and roping in. As Xiao Yang was happily eating, a cultivator in blue clothes walked over. Due to the fact that he was standing there, he was looking down at them. "You are Xiao Yang?" The cultivator in blue asked with a smile. The blue-clothed cultivator seemed to be doing it on purpose. His tone was also deliberately raised, clearly wanting to attract everyone's attention. Sure enough, countless gazes fell on Xiao Yang. Before the banquet began, Xiao Yang's name had spread throughout the capital. Half of the god realm knew about him. Of course, this was not a good reputation. Many people thought that Xiao Yang was a toad lusting after a swan's meat. Xiao Yang looked at the cultivator in blue and didn't deny it. He smiled and nodded. "That's right, I am. Do you have any business with me?" At this moment, Xiao Yang also felt the other party's malice. He wanted to see what kind of storm this guy wanted to stir up. At this moment, Yang Sun felt very helpless. The matter of him receiving Xiao Yang was no secret in the capital. If he didn't come this time, he wouldn't know who Xiao Yang was. However, since he came, it was clear who Xiao Yang was. "Zhang Xuani, what do you want?" Yang Sin angrily asked. However, the cultivator in blue didn't care about Yang Sun's question at all. Instead, he laughed and attracted even more gazes. All of them stared at Xiao Yang. "I heard that you are determined to win Princess Mingzhu. I originally thought that you were a genius, but it seems that you are only SOSO. Zhang Xuani said with disdain. Xiao Yang didn't retort, but he was very unhappy. Wasn't it a bit too much to cause trouble for him in front of everyone, just to show off, wanting to use him as a stepping stone. Did he think about whether he was strong enough? He is still King Wu's rank 7. May I ask if there is anyone here whose cultivation is lower than this trash? Zhang Xuanyi asked with a mocking look. As soon as these words were said, many people immediately roared with laughter. Indeed, in this jade pool, Xiao Yang's cultivation was the lowest apart from the maids. It could be said that almost all of them were King Wu's rank 8 existences, and a few of them were even rank 9 existences. However, Xiao Yang was the most unique one. He was the only rank 7 King Wu. You trash! You are really a toad that wants to eat swan meat. Why don't you take a piss and look at yourself to see if you are worthy? Zhang Xuanyi said angrily. At the same time, Zhang Xuanyi also kicked out, preparing to kick Xiao Yang. This was a great opportunity to be in the limelight. How could Zhang Xuanyi miss it? So what if Xiao Yang had the dimension's protection? In the end, he was just a trash without strength. In the realm of the gods, trash did not have the right to speak. However, as soon as Zhang Xuanyi raised his foot, he cried out miserably and immediately fell to the ground. He hugged his leg as he constantly held in pain. The situation suddenly changed. Instantly, everyone looked at Xiao Yang angrily. Xiao Yang, you are too arrogant. You actually dared to hurt people at Princess Mingzhu's banquet. In an instant, many people began to stir. They looked as if they were ready to teach Xiao Yang a lesson. Xiao Yang sat there without any movement. He naturally knew why Zhang Xuanyi suddenly fell to the ground. Therefore, since someone stood up for him, he naturally did not need to do anything else. At this time, the maids also stood up. However, the current situation was not something they could control with their strength. In the next moment, Bai Jian stood up. He patted his clothes and said, "Tell me, why are you so careless? You raised your leg and kicked my uncontrollable sword intent. I can't do anything about it if I accidentally injure you. How am I going to explain this to Princess Mingzhu?" As Bai Jian spoke, he looked as if everything had nothing to do with him. He was very helpless. Chapter 1555. After Bai Jian finished his words, there was complete silence. Although Bai Jian did not reveal his identity, the uncontrollable sword intent was enough to reveal a lot of information. In this grand event, there was only one person who was outstanding in the Tao of the sword. He was one of a kind, the only person who could easily injure King Wu's level 8 Zhang Xuanyi was probably the level 9 sword genius of King Wu, Bai Jian. Immediately, many people began to mutter in their hearts. When did Xiao Yang get involved with Bai Jian? Moreover, Bai Jian pretended that nothing had happened, but his intention was very clear. He wanted to stand up for Xiao Yang. What was the relationship between Xiao Yang and Bai Jian? Under such circumstances, it was really hard to say. Zhang Xuanyi was also complaining in his heart. He originally wanted to be in the limelight, but who knew that he would hit an iron plate? The few maidservants were also in a difficult position. If Xiao Yang made a move, they could still make a move and use the prestige of the god realm to suppress him. However, Bai Jian was different. The level 9 King Wu was a true distinguished guest who could not be offended. For a moment, there was complete silence. They did not know what to say. Everyone, I think this might be just a misunderstanding. As for this fellow's injury, I can only deeply apologize. If there are any sequelae, feel free to come to the Sky Sword Realm and look for me. I will take responsibility. Bai Jian's words were not malicious, but there was a hint of threat in his tone. Originally, Bai Jian did not want to bother with a clown. However, this guy was ready to make a move at this time. Bai Jian could not stand it anymore. Since it's a misunderstanding, it's fine to explain. Xiaolan, take young Master Zhang to treat his injury first. At this time, a maidservant appeared above and said with a smile. The maidservant's cultivation was not low. When she appeared, many people were slightly shocked. Soon, a maidservant quickly walked out and helped Zhang Xuanyi leave. At this time, Many people's eyes fell on the maidservant above. The maidservant waved her hand and said, "Esteemed guests, please calm down. I am the princess' personal maidservant, Xiao Yu. The princess has some matters to attend to, so she will be a little late." Immediately, many people's moods became a lot lower. Many people even came here just to see Princess Mingzhu. "Xiao, you will drink a cup of wine on behalf of the princess as an apology," Xiao Yu said as she raised a cup of wine and drank it in one gulp. Immediately, many people felt relieved and no longer bothered about it. Instead, they started drinking. Moreover, Xiao Yu had made it very clear that Princess Mingzhu was only delayed by some matters. It was not that she would not come. She had already waited for several years. Now that she had to wait a few more hours, it was naturally not a big deal. After a while, the geniuses from all over the place started to move around and make friends with each other. After all, one more friend might mean one more path in the future. Moreover, those who were able to come to the Jade Lake to participate in the banquet were naturally top geniuses from all over the world. Of course, among them, Xiao Yang was excluded. This was the only rank 7 King Wu. There were some people who mustered up their courage and wanted to make friends with Bai Jian. However, Bai Jian only replied politely and continued to talk nonsense with Xiao Yang. This action also made many people very puzzled. Where exactly was Xiao Yang? He actually had Bai Jian backing him up. Moreover, from the looks of it, the friendship between them was very deep. After a while, a person who looked very valiant entered the Jade Lake. His eyes revealed a sharp look, as if he was looking for something. Very quickly, that person's gaze collided with Bai Jian's. Immediately, the two of them were stunned on the spot. Their eyes contained many emotions that were difficult to describe in a few words. However, very quickly a royal relative of the realm of the gods pulled that person forward and finally sat in a seat closer to the front. It could be said that there were only 4 seats closest to Princess Mingzhu. Now, 3 of them were already occupied, and to be able to sit in that seat, one had to have the strength of rank 9 King Wu. The reason why there was an empty seat was because Bai Jian and Xiao Yang were sitting together, so there was an empty seat. Xiao Yang also took a look at that man. His brows were slightly furrowed. He felt that this matter was not simple. This face looked somewhat familiar. However, at that moment, he could not recall where he had seen it. Bai Jian used his elbow to nudge Xiao Yang and said, "Do you see that person?" Xiao Yang nodded. He naturally knew who Bai Jian was talking about. That person is Lei Dingtian. As Bai Jian said, his voice became slightly deeper. These words made Xiao Yang stunned for a moment. This name was indeed somewhat familiar. Seeing that Xiao Yang was still hesitating, Bai Jian did not think of the other party's identity. He sighed helplessly and said, "He is the son of the 1,000 Thunder Palace Master, Lei Dingyin's elder brother." As soon as these words came out, Xiao Yang's expression changed drastically. In this case, the 2 of them were Lei Dingtian's enemies. He had personally killed Lei Dingtian's younger brother, and Bai Jian had led the allied forces to force his father to death. Such a deep hatred was really hard to settle. I'm fine. My strength is similar to his. Even if I can't win, I can still leave safely. As for you, he doesn't dare to act rashly in the realm of the gods. However, it's hard to say after leaving the realm of the gods. Bai Jian said somewhat helplessly. Xiao Yang also nodded helplessly. The sudden appearance of this mortal enemy really made him feel somewhat helpless. Back then, when the Wild Thunder's secret realm opened, Lei Dingtian came to the realm of the gods to cultivate in seclusion. That's why he did not appear. Even when the 1,000 Thunder Palace was destroyed, he did not know anything. But now, he must have investigated this matter thoroughly. When Bai Jian said this, he was somewhat helpless. It could be said that the reason why the Sky Sword realm did not exterminate them was very simple. It was because of the variable Lei Dingtian. As expected, in these few years, Lei Dingtian had also broken through to King Wu level 9 and became the pinnacle existence in this world. However, it was hard to say when Lei Dingtian would settle the score from back then. Of course, even if he did settle the score, Bai Jian was not afraid. The Thousand Thunder Palace was the one who started the matter back then. In the end, the Thousand Thunder Palace master was forced to commit suicide. That was also the evil karma that he had planted. He did not have the slightest psychological burden. Suddenly, the atmosphere became much more relaxed. Many people also subconsciously looked up. A woman leisurely walked over. Chapter 1556. The lady wore a white dress that looked very plain, and her hair accessories were also very simple, as though they could be bought from any small stall. Her face was covered with a veil, and her face couldn't be seen clearly. Although the lady looked very ordinary, the aura that she emitted from her every movement made people feel that she was extraordinary, as though she was a goddess that had descended to the mortal world, making people feel relaxed and happy. Although they couldn't see the lady's face clearly, many people were intoxicated by her. Although they didn't reveal any words, the name in their hearts was on the verge of being called out. To have such an otherworldly temperament, it was probably only that Princess Mingzhu. After Princess Mingzhu walked to the main seat, her gaze quickly swept across the entire fairy lake, as though with just a glance, it was enough to make people feel blessed. For the goddess in their hearts to look at them was also a great honor, and it was enough to make them happy for a while. Although many people had racked their brains and tried their best to get an invitation letter, they were very clear in their hearts that it was just wishful thinking to get the favor of Princess Mingzhu. Furthermore, it was very likely that Princess Mingzhu wouldn't like any of them. "Thank you everyone for attending my banquet. It's my honor," Princess Mingzhu said indifferently. Instantly, countless people felt as though they had heard the sound of nature, and their hearts were intoxicated. Even Xiao Yang's expression couldn't help but change slightly. This Princess Mingzhu's voice was really pleasant to the ears, as though all the voices in front of her paled in comparison. However, since he couldn't see Princess Mingzhu's face clearly, Xiao Yang didn't feel too much in his heart. Instead, Xiao Yang was extremely fearful of this princess's strength. Although he couldn't see anything, and he couldn't test it out, his feelings were rarely wrong. Princess Mingzhu's position in the realm of the gods was naturally a peak existence, and the resources that she could get were unimaginable. Even if they were to pile up, she might even be a level 9 existence like King Wu. Seeing that his realm was indeed the lowest among those present, Xiao Yang felt rather helpless in his heart. Of course, Xiao Yang's conjecture about Princess Mingzhu's realm was not baseless. Back then, Unrivaled God had also said that he could not defeat Princess Mingzhu. That was enough to explain a lot of information and questions. At this moment, many people were cheering. Some of them were even completely stunned. Looking at that elegant woman, their hearts were already infatuated with her. They hadn't drunk much yet, but it was as if they were floating in the clouds. Bai Jian also frowned slightly. Soon after, the corners of his mouth revealed a trace of a smile. No one knew what he was thinking in his heart. "This time around, due to some matters, I came a bit late. Everyone, please do not blame me. This cup of wine is a toast to everyone." At this time, Princess Mingzhu also raised her cup. After she finished speaking, she drained it in one gulp. Many people picked up their wine glasses and drank in a daze. Some people even did some laughable things because of their lack of willpower. Some people didn't even know they were holding plates or basins. Some of the maidservants looked at the infatuated people and snickered. Of course, they could understand. What kind of person was Princess Mingzhu? Her appearance was unparalleled in the world. Naturally, it was normal for these ordinary people to be infatuated with her and lose their minds. If such a situation did not occur, they would find it rather strange. At the same time, many maidservants' gazes fell on Xiao Yang, who they had heard about long ago. Seeing that he was acting as usual and did not have much of a change in his emotions because of Princess Mingju's appearance, they found it rather strange. In fact, Xiaoyang was still calmly eating his food. It was as if he had been eaten in his previous life and wanted to make up for it all. Xiaoyang was very clear that these were all great supplements for cultivation, and eating more of them was also extremely good for cultivation. Moreover, he was indeed not that interested in Princess Mingju, so it was inevitable that he would be a little excited right now. After that, Princess Mingju began to speak. Of course, what she said was nothing more than something like, "Don't be courteous since you're a guest in the God realm." However, she did not mention anything about the matter of her choosing a husband. After speaking for a while, Princess Mingju sat on her seat and quietly looked at all the people in the fairy pool. Many people felt that the princess must be looking to see if there was anyone she liked. They all sat upright and checked their behavior, afraid that they would leave a bad impression on Princess Mingju. You don't say. Although we can't see his face, his aura is enough to make people yearn for him. Bai Jian also lowered his voice and said. Xiaoyang also nodded slightly and said, "This aura is indeed unique." Yang Sun sat upright and still at the side, listening to the discussion of the two people beside him. He did not have any thoughts or changes in his expression. After all, it was very possible for these two freaks to say anything. Therefore, there was no need to be shocked or despise them. After a while, Princess Mingju also came down. However, the people she personally received were the 3 9th level absolute geniuses of King Wu. Many people's gazes followed Princess Mingju's every move, hoping that the Holy Fairy would take another look at them. The fairy pool banquet this time was not only a banquet for Princess Mingju to choose a husband, it was also a great opportunity for the God realm to absorb and rope in the geniuses from the outside world. Therefore, how could they miss this opportunity? Time passed slowly. Princess Mingju and the three people did not talk much and only exchanged some simple greetings. Then, Princess Mingju's gaze wandered around the fairy pool again. Very quickly, she saw 3 people in a corner that was not easy to be noticed. A person sat there alone, as if he was autistic. That was her cousin, Yang Sun. Suddenly, Princess Mingju also came down from her seat and walked towards the fairy pool. After seeing Princess Mingju's action, many people held their breaths because they felt that there was definitely someone below who was chosen. That was why the princess came down. But who exactly was the person who had been chosen? Immediately, everyone's heart was filled with anticipation and wanted to know the answer. It could be said that as long as Princess Mingju did not walk in front of that person, it meant that it could be anyone. Immediately, many people were praying in their hearts, hoping that such good luck would befall them. Chapter 1557. Looking at the fairy walking forward step by step, many people felt very nervous. At the same time, they were also looking forward to it, hoping that they would be the lucky one to be favored, and from then on, they would be able to surpass Qin Yun and soar to the heavens. When Princess Mingju walked past one person after another, she did not stop. Immediately, the hearts of those people sank into despair. As expected, the person chosen was not them. However, at the same time, many people still held on to hope. They felt that anything could happen. That feeling of anticipation was too strong. At the same time, it also made some people feel very disappointed. Princess Mingju did not walk very slowly, but many people felt that this was a very difficult period of time. They were afraid that they would not be the chosen one. Therefore, they were suffering. If heartbreak could be heard, then at this time, it was likely that countless men would be heartbroken. Moreover, it would be difficult for them to accept such a situation. Even the gazes of the 3 special people fell down. They were also very curious. Who did Princess Mingju come down for this time? Not long after, Princess Mingju stopped in front of Xiaoyang. Immediately, everyone began to wail in their hearts. Could it be that Princess Mingju and Xiaoyang were old friends? So they had already made an agreement? This time, it was just to create momentum for Xiaoyang. However, very quickly, some people also realized that the person sitting next to Xiaoyang was King Wu's level 9 by Jian. Princess Mingzhu must have personally received by Jian out of courtesy. Xiaoyang raised his head slightly and looked at the woman who was dressed in a fresh and elegant manner. There was also a faint fragrance coming from her, which made him feel extremely relaxed. It was as if this woman, standing in front of him and not doing anything, was enough to make people feel that it was a kind of pleasure. Yang Sun, on the other hand, did not even look at Princess Mingzhu. There was even a trace of disdain in his emotions. On the other hand, Bai Jian took a few glances and confirmed that Princess Mingzhu was here for Xiaoyang. He also made a sneaky smile. Being looked at like this by Princess Mingzhu, Xiaoyang also looked at her. This simple exchange of gazes made many cultivators feel heartbroken and crazy. Such an intention seemed to be enough to reveal a lot of information. They naturally knew who Princess Mingzhu's gaze was on. Bai Jian, who was beside her, did not even look at him. "You are Xiaoyang?" Princess Mingzhu asked. Xiaoyang nodded and said, "That's right, I am Xiaoyang." This was just a simple question and answer, but it made many people gnash their teeth in hatred. Even though they were King Wu level 8, they didn't dare to casually talk to Princess Mingzhu. But this time, the incomparably noble princess actually took the initiative to ask Xiaoyang. How could their hearts be balanced? In their eyes, Xiaoyang was just a piece of trash with the lowest cultivation level present. In the face of Zhang Xuani's questioning, he was a coward who did not dare to speak. If it was not for Bai Jian's help, he would not be able to sit there peacefully. How could such a piece of trash be qualified to be favored by Princess Mingzhu? In some people's hearts, they even treated Xiaoyang as their mortal enemy. It could be said that with this simple action, Xiaoyang had already made countless enemies. At the same time, Xiaoyang also felt countless hostile gazes on him, which made him feel even more pressured. He did not have any thoughts at first, but with the princess's question, he was afraid that he would not be able to explain himself. However, Xiaoyang did not need to explain anything because he did not say anything of the sort. It was all fabricated by others, and then there were people who added fuel to the fire. The rumors became more and more outrageous, which was very normal. If one were to refute more, others would definitely not believe them. Instead, they would think that one was admitting defeat. In many people's eyes, no one could resist Princess Mingzhu's charm. As long as it was a normal man, they would yearn for her and be unable to extricate themselves. Many times, it was an extremely terrifying thing to judge others by one's own standards. Princess Mingzhu's veil moved slightly. No one knew if she was smiling or not, but such a slight change made many people's imagination run wild. The perfect image in their hearts became even more perfect. However, the person she was facing was a piece of trash with the lowest cultivation level. How could people be happy about this? If the person Princess Mingzhu liked was a terrifying level 9 King Wu, although they would be disappointed, they would not feel angry. All of this was because they felt that Xiaoyang was too weak. He was not worthy of Princess Mingzhu at all. That was why they were so angry in their hearts. I look forward to your performance. After Princess Mingzhu said this, she turned around and left. Princess Mingzhu's departure this time was not simple. She directly used her movement technique and left with a fairy-like aura. After Princess Mingzhu left, countless people's gazes fell on Xiaoyang. It was as if they wanted to skin him alive. Feeling the countless hostile gazes, Xiaoyang felt a little apprehensive in his heart. These people were simply too fanatical. But at the same time, he also felt that this Princess Mingzhu was not a kind person. This time, she purposely gave him a huge problem and transferred all the hatred onto him. For a moment, Xiaoyang felt helpless in his heart. Fortunately, this was the Jade Lake, the world of the gods. Otherwise, these guys would have already lost control of themselves and attacked Xiaoyang together, turning him into a pile of ashes. Yang Sun was secretly laughing in his heart. The original complaints only had a small effect on Xiaoyang. However, with just a few simple sentences, it was enough to make countless people hate Xiaoyang. After Bai Jian saw that Princess Mingzhu had completely disappeared, he smiled slyly. He cupped his hands and said, "Congratulations, Brother Xiao. Congratulations, Brother Xiao. Looks like you still have a chance." As soon as these words came out, the atmosphere in the scene became heated again. Those fervent gazes caused Xiaoyang to feel as though there was a blade at his back. The fire was already burning, but Bai Jian still had to continue adding fuel to it. Such a brother was really considerate. Was he afraid that the other people's anger would not be enough and they would not be able to unite to deal with him? At this moment, it could be said that there were indeed many people who had the intention to kill.